Appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to come out here tonight.
5 degrees right now.
We are going to call this May 23rd, 2019 special meeting for the 2019-20 fiscal year budget to order. We're going to begin with public comment. Is everyone familiar with the public comment guidelines? Okay. Who here wishes to speak at public comment tonight? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good evening or afternoon. My name is Monica Sipe. I live at 626 Symes Avenue, and I'm here to speak regarding the animal shelter budget, because I reviewed the entire budget last night, and I saw that the shelter budget is again sort of, it looks like it's in jeopardy of not having the revenue to cover its costs again. And that the options would be to either close or use Oakland County. But my main question is why does the shelter need to generate revenue and operate as a profit center? Other city departments don't need to have revenue to cover their costs. Departments like, critical departments like HR, IT, finance. So if there was regular funding for the shelter, which is very minimal when you look at the $40 million expenditures for 1920. It's only like $128,000, I think. And also, the animal shelter operates under the guidance of the police department. And I don't remember what year, but it was a few years back that the residents overwhelmingly approved police millage. And also, in conjunction with that, there's studies that says that over 70% of the U.S. Citizens have some kind of pet. So if you extrapolate that to the city residents, it sounds like there'd be support for having some funding go to the animal shelter. So if you take like 60,000 residents in Royal Oak, $2 a resident for the entire year only, that's $120,000 to cover the annual cost for the shelter. And the shelter, I see, excuse me, I see two sides to it. There's the animal lover like me that really enjoys having animal companions. We see the benefit of the shelter to, in case our animals get lost, it's a close place to go. With 75 being messed up from like 13 mile north, would people really go to Oakland County to turn in an animal? Or would they go to Michigan Humane Society, Detroit, or would they find some other animal shelter, or would they just let the animal go instead of trying to help it because they just can't take care of another animal? It reduces the pet overpopulation. Sorry, my font got smaller. When you adopt a pet from the shelter, it has received good care. It encourages others to adopt from shelters. They're good ambassadors. They get the best treatment from the shelter. Our shelter is wonderful, has wonderful staff, wonderful volunteers. It's airy, bright atmosphere when you go in there. Oh, sorry, my time's up. But I just wanted to make the point that for people that aren't so fond of animals, or it's not a high priority for them, having the shelter reduces the strays. They don't see it now because we do have the shelter. It's been around for a while. So it could become an issue with more strays, more dogs running out into the street, getting hit. Having a shelter there to educate people about how to take good care of their animals and vaccinate them, and vaccinate against rabies just makes it safer. The Royal Oak,
I do need you to finish your last point, ma'am.
So the Royal Oak mission statement is our mission is to provide a safe, healthy, and sustainable community. So to me, making sure that the animal shelter in Royal Oak stays a viable department is something that I'd hope you consider. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know, Mr. Johnson, you had some comments about animal fund or funding?
That goes back to something that occurred in either 2004 or 2005. At the time, the city commission cut the animal shelter out of the budget altogether, and was preparing to close it. There was a lot of the volunteers and a lot of people in the community that wanted to keep the animal shelter came to the commission and said, we'll raise the money to keep it open. The commission said, go ahead, and they did, and up until now they have. But we have not used any city money for the animal shelter, at least since then.
Who's next? Ms. Wagman. Points are well understood, and we'll have a discussion about it.
Okay, Janice Wagman, Wellesley, Royal Oak. I found on the city's website dated May 1st, 19, that there's a public notice regarding the CDBG funds, and we have 30 days to respond. So since it's already been approved by the City Commission, I chose this opportunity to discuss it. I object to the following: $33,000 to Roses. Roses had to restrict services last year because they ran out of money. So maintaining the $33,000 level, it should be increased. Plus, they only have 2 workers for the entire city for Roses. A $200,000 decrease in the rehab funds. I was told when the article ran in the Royal Oak Review that they actually shut off applications because they knew they were going to run out of money. Apparently you have excess money now, but if you start advertising, I think it should stay at the same level. A $350,000 decrease in parks. Why? Why decrease $350,000 out of parks when we see all the time people are complaining, not just about the maintenance, but about the equipment in the parks and what needs to change? And this is over last year's level. But then you added $600,000 to pave a residential street, which, according to your website, is not how that is handled. Unpaved streets, residential streets are up to the residents to vote on, and then the city cooperatively pays part of that. So I don't understand the $600,000 for that, while a $550,000 decrease in other programs. Secondly, seniors. They appear to be at the bottom of the barrel in this budget. There's no improvements to the senior center, no suggestion of fitness equipment being added, which is kind of standard in other senior centers. The parking lot needs repaving. And the kitchen, for some reason, has become a self-supporting issue. There's no city funds that go for that. But my understanding is the chef would like to have more fruits and vegetables in the winter season, but they can't offer that because it's too expensive. And I was surprised to hear that the $350,000 transfer from the general fund was held hostage by the safety millage. Does that mean that if it's renewed, if it's not renewed, the senior center will close or won't get those funds? Also, you have a strategic goal right in your budget that says to support the task force. But I don't see any money going for that. I see there's probably going to be an intern, but there's no money to do mailers for community engagement or anything else. We have money for marijuana surveys. We have money to mail out bike lane rules, but nothing for this senior task force, which needs the money in order to promote this. The budgets have dedicated more new money to bikes, bike lanes, bike rentals, and special traffic lights than they have for seniors. It's time to include seniors as one of the top priorities in our budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wagman. Who's next? Anybody else? Going once? Going twice? All righty, we're going to close public comment, bring the meeting back up to this side of the table. This brings us to item number 3, which is the General Fund Parks and Forestry Cost Center. Ms. Rudd.
Thank you.
Contort myself to be a little bit more respectful.
I'm going to try to go in order, pretty much this evening, rather than flipping back and forth, as we did the first evening. On page 121, this is the only cost center we're going to cover in the general fund. The rest was covered the first evening. Page 121, Parks and Forestry. Overtime wages are increasing $15,000 based on increased Estimated activity, miscellaneous contracts include $10,000 for a landscape architect and $9,000 to expand the fencing at Mark Twain Dog Park, and then $35,000, the budget's increasing for sand, gravel, and slag, and due to adding wood cushion material for the various city park improvement projects. And then just want to mention the development of Normandy Oaks will be the primary objective during the upcoming years. And those expenditures are in the Parks Capital Improvement Fund, which is in the 400 series. The capital projects for parks are $190,000 for the Salter Center roof replacement, $125,000 for Salter Center parking lot repaving, $45,000 for Bassett Park improvements, and then $17,000 for tennis court resurfacing.
Commissioner Dubak.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if this is the most appropriate time, but with regard to Normandy Oaks, I know we had conversations when we originally did the deal for the sale of the land, that the new revenues coming off of the residential development there were going to be dedicated to Normandy Oaks. I'm just wondering is there a boilerplate in the budget language that makes that clear? Is this the appropriate place to raise that issue?
Well, it's not specifically what we're on right now, but we can talk about it right now.
Oh, sorry, I just saw Normandy Oaks.
And there isn't anything in here right now that really deals with that. I did send out something to all the commissioners today with some numbers in response to a communication from Commissioner Macy. What we had talked about doing, and the commission has never taken any action to actually provide us specific direction, is to dedicate the general operating levy that comes off of the houses that are part of the houses and condos that are part of the Robertson Brothers development at Normandy Oaks to the park, to maintenance and improvements of the park. I had projected that it will probably be about $200,000 a year. For this year, it would be $65,573 because this year it's based on the condition of the amount of development that was done as of December 31st of 2018. And at that point in time, it was less than 25% built, considerably less. So if the commission wants to, it cannot pass a resolution or do anything that binds future commissions on this. But what you can do is set a policy that directs administration to be planning the budget an amount equal to what those taxes generate out of the general fund to go over to parks, either to Parks and Forestry or into the Park Improvement Fund, either one.
And Mr. Johnson, is it necessary to have a special, I know like in here you'll find like the Arts Beats and Eats account where we kind of keep track of the funding received from that activity that we use for different park improvement projects. Is it also necessary to create an account for this, or is it just simply, hey, we did the tally and now it becomes a line item in the budget when we have discussions? What do you think is
Well, there's two
best way to
approaches.
be
There's
transparent
two
about it?
approaches to use. One is to just treat it as a general fund revenue, okay, and just budget an amount at least equal to that in the Parks and Forestry account.
Okay.
The second option is to actually move the money over to the Park Improvement Fund, which is where we put money that comes from Arts Beats and Eats. Is also where we have used as the capital projects fund for Normandy Oaks, and we'll probably be using it for the downtown park. Julie's frowning.
I'm
Did I
sorry,
say
is
something
the
wrong?
intent for operating costs or capital costs to cover?
I don't think we made the distinction, though I think it
Okay.
was really meant to probably be more operating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I would prefer it not be in the capital fund.
Right.
Yeah.
Commissioner Dubak?
Yeah, I think for those of us that were at the table at the time, we had made clear that our intent, and while it wasn't necessarily a part of the ballot language, that those who voted to place the issue on the ballot intended for any new revenue generated by that property to go toward the maintenance and upkeep of Normandy Oaks, but also to the extent that that revenue surpasses the needs of Normandy Oaks, to help maintain and upkeep our parks. So I would just like to make sure that, while I understand we can't bind future commissions, and a future commission could decide to redirect those dollars, that our intent in this budget and any future budgets that we are at this table, that is our goal. That being said, the new neighborhood requires police services and DPS services and things like that. I think that the budget exists to make sure we're providing those high-quality services, but our promise at the time was that the new revenue, which is very rare for the city to generate new revenue, this is a rare opportunity where we build a new neighborhood that, doesn't count against our Headley cap, that's not capped by Prop A. This is a rare time that there are actually new dollars in the budget, and we said they were gonna go toward Parks and Rec, and I wanna make it clear in that budget that that's our intent. So I will move for the city manager to make that language clear in the budget.
Okay, that will probably require us adding a line, but we can do that.
A motion.
I do want to make it very clear to everyone, what we're talking about is strictly multiplying that 65,573 by the 7.0625 mils from the general operating levy. This does not include anything that comes from any of the other special levies.
Right. Or any of the county, state, school, because
No.
all that money has to
No.
go to those
Correct.
entities for the
No.
new population. And we just transfer it over to the county.
Even
so-
all of our other special levies are all for a dedicated purpose.
General operating revenues, correct.
Yep.
General operating is the only one we can do that for.
A motion by Commissioner Dubak. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Macy. Discussion on this? Commissioner Lavasser.
Don, you mentioned the 65 number, that's the current taxable value for the parcels?
The taxable value is 9.284720 million.
That's the current,
And that will generate $65,573 in general operating levy.
okay, and that's this year. Next year, we expect those numbers to go much higher because,
By this time, well, by December 31st of this year, most of that project should be completed. I wouldn't say that all of it will be, but I would think most of it will be. And probably by another year, it'll all be completed.
okay, but based upon the current taxable value, you expect an additional $65,000 worth of revenue?
Yes, this year.
Okay, thank you.
And you said estimated up to 200,000 when it's fully rolled.
That was my original estimate, and
Could be
looking-
higher.
Looking like a pretty good estimate right now.
Commissioner Dubak.
But that's an eyeball guess by looking at how many of the properties are actually developed and
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Just given that it raised the issue of new revenue, I just want to clarify my point that there's a lot of folks who assume that when they see a tear down in a new build in their neighborhood, so a $150,000 home becomes a $500,000 home, folks think that generates new revenue for the city, and it absolutely does not. That counts against our Headley cap.
No, I don't hate to correct the commissioner.
Sure,
but in
sure.
this case, I have to. Where there's a tear down in a new build, that does generate new revenue.
But it counts against our Headley cap that forces
No.
us to bring down the levy.
No, that's new construction. What counts against us is when the value of an existing property increases.
Okay.
Like your house, you didn't do anything to it, but because of the market has changed, the value may go up 10%.
Oh, my understanding was when there was a pop-up.
We don't
because-
get any of that.
Yeah,
So
when you
we
did
don't get
home
the pop-up.
improvements.
No, we don't get the pop-up. Pop-up is what occurs when you actually sell your house.
sell your
And the new guy pays
Right.
twice as much for it.
Okay, my bad.
He
right.
pays the pop-up.
Right.
But we don't get it. It actually results in everybody else getting a slight decrease.
Apologies.
But new construction is the exception.
So the rising property values don't necessarily generate new revenue for the city.
That's correct.
Correct. All right.
But new construction does.
This new construction does. Thank you.
Commissioner Lavasser.
My understanding is it's somewhat of a complicated formula where you take that property that's being constructed and you basically say, here's the base.
Right.
And that one is subject to the Headley limits, but anything that's considered to be an addition, that wouldn't be subject to those limits, and that
Yeah,
would be
but if it's a
added.
complete tear down, it's all considered new.
To help maybe with Commissioner Lavasser's point,
There's some land value in
Yeah.
that typically that does, yeah.
if you put a big addition onto your house, maybe
Yeah,
clarify for him. how
Somebody
it's-
we know that.
Somebody that did that, trust me, I got my tax bill. I fully realize that.
Wouldn't we thank you?
Well, and then that gets in the complication of when it's a new tear down, like when they keep the one wall, right? They find the way to work around it, so it's an addition and not the tear down type thing.
That isn't really done very often on residential. I mean, usually the thing with keeping a wall usually has more to do with getting around historical requirements or in some cases grants that are involved. I actually haven't seen that happen in a long time, but it did happen in a structure in Birmingham when I worked there.
But to the question that Commissioner Lavasser raised, an addition onto a house, let's say you're to add an addition and prove that you still live there, clearly you pay incremental tax revenue for that, as an individual.
Yes.
I think his question is, does that addition apply towards Headley, or is that considered new construction that goes above and beyond?
It's considered new construction that is not subject to Headley or Prop A.
That clarification, okay. Commissioner Prush?
No, I was just going to say, we're adding on a 10 by 14 addition to our house, and so we had to take down part of the original 1920 in order to do this, so it'll be real interesting to see how the assessor handles our house, because we have part of the old part missing, but yet we have this little new part, so I don't know what they're going to do.
Well, you get a really unusual taxable value based on your old and new.
Yeah, it'll be,
You're like, wait a minute.
it'll be interesting.
Our normal policy for dealing with city commission is whatever the increase is, we double it.
Oh, sure.
To be safe.
Maybe even triple.
Only if you're lucky.
And it'll be done this year, so December 31st, it'll be a big surprise.
Any other discussion? All right, if not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. All right.
Got something for you.
Oh, Commissioner Macy.
Is now the time when I could propose more money for parks?
Commissioner Macy.
I'm
You're
just
a
checking.
Commissioner, you could propose anything anytime.
You
Oh.
have the floor, do what you
All
will.
right, don't make me too excited.
Propose to adjourn too, if you like.
I do not like. So, last year I came with sort of a laundry list of pet projects of things that I thought we could spend money on in the parks. And we have so many parks, we have these 50-plus parks, and in the maintenance of them, sometimes there's little parts of it that is not quite where we want it to be. But everybody has their own neighborhood park that they have their eye on and would like to see improvements for. So this year, at the suggestion of some of my fellow commissioners, what I would like to do instead is to ask for some money for the Parks and Rec Board to use to consider park maintenance throughout the city and consider what the top priorities are based on the city, from their perspective. So I'm asking for $50,000 for a park maintenance fund for Parks and Rec to, throughout the year, spend money as they see fit, perhaps repaving tennis courts or basketball courts, or doing some of the maintenance around the barriers for the playgrounds, that type of thing.
Or things that pop up, someone comes in and says, hey, this play structure is really, my kids are getting slivers, and maybe we didn't know about it, and now we have something to react to it.
Exactly. So, Commissioner Dubak reminds me I have to make it a motion. I would like to make a motion for $50,000 for a park maintenance fund for the Parks and Rec.
We have a motion by Commissioner Macy, a second by Commissioner Dubak. Further discussion, Commissioner Macy?
I'm so excited.
Just can't hide it. No 80s ballots. Commissioner Dubak.
I think Commissioner Macy has made a solid point, like, while we've made our parks went through 20 years of lack of investment up until the crash. And then while we were busy getting our fiscal house in order, there was still no dollars to do that. And I think we've really worked hard. I think we've done 17 parks over the last 6 years, but we have 50 parks. And to the extent that we do have capital to expedite that schedule, and I think $50,000 in the scope of this budget is there, and will positively impact residents, and so to the extent that we can do it, it's a one-time expenditure, there's no ongoing cost. I'm happy to support the motion to make sure that we're getting as much positive improvements to our parks and our neighborhoods as possible.
Real quick, Mr. Johnson, before Commissioner Prush.
Yeah, just a technical aspect. The motion as it's made seems to imply you're giving authority to the Parks and Rec Board to spend money. None of our boards have authority to spend money.
Okay, to make recommendations back to the commission, should we go
The
with that?
authority to spend money derives from the
Okay.
commission through the budget.
Make recommendations up to $50,000 to
Yes.
pass it back to the commission. That's what I meant to say.
Yes, I think that's what I interpreted.
I understood it that way.
Commissioner Prush.
I just want to be clear that this is just expenditures on stuff. It's not personnel.
Oh, Commissioner Parush, you know me so well.
I mean, because when we were talking about the crash, we went down to 2 park maintenance workers, and the only thing they could do was mow. So our whole maintenance program got so behind, and we're still catching up. We're back up to 7, I think, now. So, but this is not for people, it's for everything but people in terms of maintenance ideas?
Commissioner Macy?
If you'd like to make a motion for a person, I would certainly support it. But my impression is that this body has decided, looking at the budget, that we don't have money for ongoing expenses like personnel right now. We do have that money coming in from Robertson Brothers in the future that I think we're going to need to add at least 1 park person with that for in future years for the maintenance of Normandy Oaks. So look for that next year. But I think this year is just for stuff.
Okay, thanks.
And I empathize with Commissioner Macy. I sat on the Parks and Rec Board, both as a citizen and as a commissioner representative for a long time. And, you know, they're very well-versed, and there's strong public participation on occasion, and needs are always moving. And I think it's appropriate that we as a city commission and funding policy have a little bit of agility to handle some, I don't say low-hanging fruit, but sometimes small amounts quickly addressed by the people that are, you know, have their closest pulse to recreation can make decisions quickly. Certainly, you know, we can solve some issues and improve the quality of life quickly for our residents as things arise throughout the year.
A question that relates to the resolution. It's been stated as Parks and Rec. Actually, we have 2 components: Parks and Forestry, which is referring to the physical side of it, the trees, the grass, the land.
Okay.
And Recreation, which is programming, and they're 2 different parts of the budget.
Okay, I was referring to the board, which is actually Parks and Rec and Senior Advisory Board, and in my mind, it was going to be everything that fell underneath that, including if there was something that the senior center needed. So perhaps that wasn't clear. I was focusing on the purpose of the board, I wasn't focusing on the budget.
The way we structure it.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if that's, Ms. Rudd's not liking that.
We could put it
complicated where it
into
comes
Parks
from.
and Forestry with the intent that we could adjust it later if they wanted to, you wanted to do it differently.
Okay, let's do that.
Commissioner Lavasser.
I think this is a worthy thing to put money into, but I do have some concerns here, and it goes back to what Ms. Rudd was telling us about our structural deficit. So looking at page 71 of our budget, we basically see that we're eating through $2.1 to $3.5 million per year, and we're basically setting ourselves up for a bit of a emergency in about 4 years, if I'm understanding correct, unless we take some action to address that. And I just haven't heard a whole lot yet of discussion about what steps we're going to take to avoid this problem in about 4 years.
Commissioner Dubak.
Sure, I think Ms. Rudd made clear that her budget projections are based on us doing the exact same thing every year that we've done this year. This year, as previous years, include a large number of capital improvements that are not necessary expenditures. So structural deficit, I think in the context that you're saying, it means paying for the things that we have to pay for: debt service, essential services, the functioning of City Hall, police and fire. There's not a structural deficit in providing those essential services. The only reason that we're digging into fund balances for items like this, things that we want to do because we can do to improve quality of life and one-time capital expenditures. We can roll those back. If you roll those back out of this budget, for example, going to the body cams for police, that's a new expenditure that has some upfront cost, and then the ongoing subscription service. It's not the same budget 3 years from now that it is right now, and I think Ms. Rudd and Mr. Johnson will bring us a budget that is aligned with revenues as necessary year after year, as has been the case for the last 8 years.
Commissioner Lavasser.
Just want to get some clarification from Ms. Rudd here. The impression I had is that this structural deficit is essentially an operational issue. I mean, that there's going to be certain fixed costs that we have from capital improvements through bonds, but otherwise, this is based upon what we're currently spending for operations, not anticipating necessarily additional capital improvements. So, I mean, you can clarify, but that's
Sure,
my
it
understanding.
does have capital included, like for instance, if you're looking right here, there's 300, in this screen, the slide we're looking at here, just in this cost center, there's $377,000 worth of capital. So
Okay,
it's a mix, it's operating costs and capital.
all right, and that capital, that's basically replacing things as they get worn out, or what is that?
Sometimes not.
The capital is the capital improvement fund, if you look at that, transferred into the forecast. So in the capital improvement fund are needs and wants. So there's a mix, it's kind of like a wish list. So so if you want to look at the details of the capital improvement plan, you'll see the types of projects, and you can see, are they more, luxury items, or they, and some of them are, and some are necessities, so.
Okay,
Like a
but,
roof
all right,
or whatever.
but based on your projections, it's fair to say that 4 years from now, we're gonna have some hard decisions if we don't make some other decisions between now and then.
Yes. That could be correct, sure.
Commissioner
And
Dubak?
let me just expand on what Commissioner Dubuck was saying. What it is for the most part is extrapolating our current year's budget out. So as he was saying, if we don't have any changes to what our increases are currently, then that's what we're gonna see, something similar. So if our, for instance, on healthcare, we have an 8% increase in healthcare this year. What I did is in the forecast, that's an average, because we don't see 8% every year. So there's some slight tweaks to those kinds of assumptions, but for the most part, it's extrapolating out the current fiscal year that we're looking at right now, 1920.
Just for example, I mean, a lot of us have been here for many budget years. We had similar numbers, but we took swift action with the county's assistance to help refinance some of our retirement obligations, and we were able to save, over $2.5 million a year, something like that, $2 million a year. So, there are always changes and things that are gonna happen that just haven't been decided upon yet. There are things in our strategic plan that haven't been fully implemented yet, but from a budgeting perspective, our finance department takes sort of the status quo and moves forward with the capital improvements project plan as is, both made up of wishes and wants. And I think we have to be very careful about when we say structural deficit, because, and maybe I'm picky because of my financial background. Structural deficit is not, it means basically your costs exceed your revenues, and your operating costs exceed your operating revenues. And I think, before we start using and throwing that word structural deficit around, I think we gotta be absolutely precisely clear what the operating revenues are, so not one-time revenues. What we get from tax revenue, what we get from consistently through the state and grants, and then what our operating costs are, like mostly personnel and things of that nature. So we don't wanna mix words here, because there are people that do have a financial background that may, misunderstand what's actually happening. Commissioner Lavasser.
I just want to clarify with regard to the motion. Basically, what we're doing is we're allocating. We're not, if this motion passed, we're not agreeing to spend the money, but we are making it available for consideration at future commission meetings.
Right.
And proposals may come up, they may have merit, they may have less merit, and we'll determine at that time.
Yep, and something else may pop up. We may have an unexpected $200,000 issue, like a flooding issue at a park, and we have to and then all of a sudden it's like, well, we can't spend that $50,000 now. We have to address this emergency that popped up or something. But we can make that decision at the time when we're voting on it. But right now, it's saying, hey, we commit $50,000 in the budget unless there's a really good reason not to spend it, such as there aren't any things to do, or there's, some sort of financial issue that we're unaware of and we have to cut everywhere. So you're right. We have this is a budget planning. We have the opportunity always to vote yea or nay on any individual thing. But we're saying, look, we're committed to, making this a likelihood, but, we're gonna see, what comes in front of us and vote on the merits of it, knowing that we've budgeted for it and we're fine. Commissioner Dubak.
Two other points on budget outlook. One is that we're still in a state of backfilling for 20 years of neglect of our capital infrastructure. which clearly, once we get to a place where things are where they should be, the
Yeah.
ongoing maintenance of those things is not nearly as heavy as what we're having to invest right now. So our parks went 20 years without any capital investment. Once we get them where they should be, keeping them where we want them will be far less expensive. Same thing with, for example, City Hall. So the debt service for City Hall is captured in this. The new City Hall is captured in this, but the cost savings for the lower maintenance and the lower utility costs of the new City Hall is not captured because what she has done is projected what we're spending this year. So even though our utility costs are gonna get cut, in half or whatever, that's not captured in the future budget because we're not there yet. She's just extrapolating what we're paying for utilities now.
Cost of moving prisoners
Right.
between
So,
the police
so the
station and the
fixed cost
courthouse.
of City Hall that we know what we're gonna pay is there, but the savings for the new City Hall is not yet captured in that budget.
Commissioner Lavasser.
Do we have the numbers on that potential savings? I believe I read it once, I want to say it was 200,000 or 300,000 when you added everything up, but I just don't recall for certain.
Yeah, there's a whole presentation from Rand Cressa that kind of outlines all the,
I don't recall that presentation, but my recollection is the number's nowhere near that great, just on utilities.
No, but the maintenance as well.
maintenance repairs.
Yeah. Well, maintenance repairs, you're gonna have in the early years, you're gonna have a significant savings because everything's new. And so you aren't going to be replacing things. In fact, the things that do go wrong and need to be replaced, a lot of it will be under warranty. But just in regards to utilities, don't expect really huge savings there.
Okay, but my recollection is that report projected what the initial savings would be per year on utilities and maintenance. And I've got a number in my head, don't know if it's the right one, but I'm looking for confirmation with that number or a correction on that number.
I'm afraid I can't help you.
Yeah.
It does exist.
Well, I'm not questioning that it exists.
For
It's
some
just
reason, I'm
that
thinking we have $2.2 million a year in bond. My recollection about 200 to 300 can be dropped off to give us, the savings because of the project.
Commissioner Perush?
I don't remember that precise number, but I remember the discussion, and it might be in the report that was done comparing the cost of renovating City
Yes,
Hall
that's what I'm thinking.
versus building a new City Hall. And not only did they analyze the actual building structural costs, the improvements that would have to be done by this building, and then everybody would have to be moved out for a year and a half and then moved back in. But also, I'm quite sure in that report, it talks about the utility savings between an existing building, even renovated, and a new building. So I think that's where the data is.
And I think we even did, and we may have discussed it, or I maybe have penciled the math at one point where, we looked at the parking structure, the 40-some-odd million, okay, boom, parking structure goes out because that's a revenue bond and parking revenues are paying for it, and it's not the full guarantee and whatever of the city. And then you had the police station, City Hall, and the park. The police station, I know we did an estimate of what we were gonna save marshaling people from, their cells to the courthouse for arraignments and things like that. Now that the police station is next to the courthouse, that was gonna save a significant amount of money and certainly keep our officers safe and our civilians safe and people incarceration safe. So I remember that, when you looked at the bond payment per year, there was a pretty big offset there, and some of the utilities too. The utilities weren't as big, like Don mentioned, but that City Hall as well, with some of those maintenance costs, we looked at it significantly. So we did do, at least I did, sort of an offsetting comparison to see, it's not just the bond payments, it's all the savings you get with the bond payments, and all the improvements to service as well. So that information, it's out there. I believe, I'm agreeing with Commissioner Perush. I think it was out there in that Plant Moran Cressa presentation about the make, buy, sell, consideration for this building. Commissioner Dubak?
And yeah, to reiterate, the debt service is captured in the projections. That's already here, but none of the savings are captured because the budget is assumed to remain the same, which actually just raised a new question for me. So we did the transfer out of $600,000 for the Normandy Oaks project that we know is going to be coming back in payments from Oakland County. Are you capturing the payments from Oakland County in the projection, or just the $600,000 that we spent, and assuming that's still outgoing every year?
if you recall, the 600,000 going out wasn't in the projection. That's something that we added.
That's something that we did in the
at
last meeting, okay.
And that's all.
So that's a
gonna
wash.
Flow through it's gonna wash through
It's a wash,
the,
okay.
Parks Capital Improvement Fund.
Yeah, over
not
time,
the
over
general.
4 years, yeah. Commissioner Macy?
Okay, so during that conversation, I was looking up the report. So it looks like what the report states is how much we were currently spending on utilities for both the police station and the city hall, and then what was anticipated to be added on to that based on the age of the facility. So for the police department, it was supposed to be an additional, so on top of what we're already paying, 135 to 150,000 per year in maintenance and capital improvements due to the age and condition of the facility. And for City Hall, excuse me, it's supposed to be an additional 175 to 200,000 per year in maintenance and required capital. So the two together, it's
Sizable.
sizable.
Yeah. Okay, but we do have a motion on the table. We kind of strayed a little bit. I don't have Mr. Gillum here. I thought Commissioner Douglas would be the hawk on this one.
Don't encourage her.
Any other discussion germane to the motion on the table, if anyone remembers what it is?
Want to read it for us?
Yeah. The motion on the table is to allocate $50,000 to the Parks Fund, as we discussed, to address recommendations made by the Parks and Recreation Committee, Citizen Committee, for park needs in the next fiscal year. Good. All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Commissioner Macy.
Thank you, Mayor.
Wish they would have done this like 5 years ago when I was on the board. All right.
One down, 52 more to go.
All right.
No, wait, there's
us
one right there,
down.
so 2 down. Okay, we can get through major streets pretty quickly, I think. Page 169. We're expecting about $4.9 million from the Act 51 revenue. This is a decent-sized increase over the prior years. And again, this year, we are not budgeting to put any of the road millage into this fund. As of now, it's pretty healthy, and we are going to be talking about the local streets in a couple minutes, and local streets is in need of that millage, so that's where we're putting it, local streets. I am not going to go through all the little cost centers. There's numerous, street maintenance, winter maintenance. There's no real significant items to discuss that I would like to discuss. I'm not sure if anyone found anything in the significant note boxes. But just stop me if you want to talk about any of those cost centers. I'll just flip to the fund summary. And as you can see there, you can see we're going to use about $1.7 million in the current fiscal year. We're budgeting to use almost $1 million next year. But both those years, both those first columns are recommending $1 million transfer to the local street fund. And again, you'll see why, based on the amount of projects that are getting done that are categorized as local streets.
Questions from Ms. Rudd on major streets? Mr. Macy?
This might be for Mr. Callahan. Are we still on the speed up in terms of the local roads?
I think we're getting to that one next.
Okay.
Come on up, Mr. Callahan. It's not as exciting as The Price is Right, but your number's been called.
Do I win a prize? Door number 3. So, we are still accepting, so there were a number of projects we brought up in advance in the first couple of years, which we use funds for. We still have our special assessment streets, which we just sent out another call for, and we have sent out more petitions to people on unimproved roads. Those unimproved streets are not included in the original millage estimates of what we would be spending our funds on. So that money would be taken away from roads that we had told neighborhoods that we were gonna come in and do their streets. So we do need those extra funds for those things. And right now, we have completed pretty much all of the things that we were going to pull ahead. So we're just doing the streets that were listed in the initial 2014 schedule of roads. What we have found is that unit prices on construction contracts have gone up significantly, which is unfortunate because, you know, back when we did our estimates and planned for this millage, construction activities in the metro region were pretty flat. So we have those cost increases, and you know, the deterioration on our current roads has continued, where we're seeing More work needs to be done on some of those streets that we had initially planned to do a limited amount. So we don't want to do a bad job on those streets. We definitely want to do as good a job as possible, and those items have also increased costs. So we're still trying to stick within our budgets and get as much done as we possibly can.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Callahan. Any other questions on major streets? Commissioner Vassar?
I don't know if it's Major Street, might be local street, or it might be something different, but in public comment, someone mentioned something about $600,000 paving of roads that I believe was coming from block grants.
Judson.
And just wonder if you could give us some insights, as to whether that's being treated differently than we would normally, and why if we are treating it differently.
Block grant isn't run by my department, but they do, the planning department who does run the block grant program came to us, and they had funds that they wanted to use, and they used to do road paving projects with block grant funds up until about 2007. Then they stopped kind of doing road projects, and they focused on using those block grant funds on other things. I'm not privy to all the different things that they use block grant funds on, but this year they came to us and said, are there any projects in the city of Royal Oak that we could find that they could spend their funds on? We looked at the new map for the where block grant funds can be spent. Judson Avenue is one of the roads in that particular new district. It didn't exist last year. You couldn't spend monies in that area of town. And there's not many parks in that area of town that money could be spent on. The money has to be spent in those areas. And they wanted to do a project in that part of the city right off the get-go. So we found that Judson was unimproved. Normally, the first-time paving of a road by city policy is to have neighboring properties participate in the cost through special assessment. And the people who put together block grant program said that would be a project they'd like to see, but they'd like to incorporate, we said, can we incorporate some green infrastructure or some other type of green component to the road paving? We've tried to get that road paved for decades. The DPS really has a problem with maintaining that gravel road, and it would be a great service to them to not have to deal with the maintenance funds of that road. So, putting all the different minds together from different departments, we suggested that as a project, and the people that manage and decide what block grant funds are to be used on decided on that project. So the resident that spoke about that's kind of the background behind including Judson Avenue, 2 blocks of it, into block grant fund to pave the street.
Thank you. Commissioner Perush?
I'm on the rehab board, which recommends the block grant budget to the commission. The unique thing about Judson as an unpaved street is that it's a side facing to the lots that are along Judson, and it's new into the low and moderate income area. So it's not economically a super high in terms of the residents' capability to handle special assessments. And the length of the side yard frontage on Judson for each house is like 3 times the normal size. They are extremely long. So even allocating it based upon side yard frontage instead of front yard frontage, each individual homeowner would have to be assessed, if it was done the normal way, $25,000. I mean, it's just an extraordinary amount. And there's no way on earth any of them are ever going to be able to afford that. I mean, it's just the length of the frontage, or side, whatever you call it, side yard frontage, is extremely long, unusually long, just because of the nature of the street. So that was the one factor that contributed to us recommending that this be done, because there's no way the residents there could ever afford to do it on their own, because it's just an extraordinary cost.
And just one more point to add to what Commissioner Perush was saying. With our incentive program right now, where we take money from the local road funds to pay for the city's portion of our incentive program, we would be paying at least 75% of the cost of that anyways with local road funds, which we would be taking away from other streets we already have programmed. If we were to do that, and say the neighborhood did come forward and have a special assessment. So we're really only sacrificing maybe 25% of what the residents would be contributing if they were to move forward with the special assessment.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Dubak.
Yeah, and just tacking on to the CDBG issue and, how it's a certain amount of money that gets, allocated out to priority issues, with regard to it's not a road issue, but the idea that somehow the money was taken from the housing rehab program to fund the roads. I had served on CDBG for 6 years. That funding fluctuated wildly from $300,000 to $800,000 over those years because it's generally based on how much usage there was in the previous years and what demand was. So some years, they were granting the dollars. It wasn't even a zero-interest loan. It was an immediately forgiven loan to get them out the door. And we would promote it, and at the end of the year, we'd see what was left. The goal is to burn down the dollars. Like, you want $0 at the end of the year, so that we can bring in the new dollars next year and move them out. So I think that the committee is informed by the previous year's demand to determine where to go. So $650,000 is still nowhere near the $300,000 low that I saw in some of those years, but again, it's informed by demand. So it's not like we took the money away from that program to give to the roads. It's, trying to figure out where the dollars have the most demand and value.
Okay. Oh, Commissioner Gibbs.
One more thing, please do Judson. That's right by my house. I walked down it the other night and two people, two houses came out to talk to me about it. Like, when is this gonna get done? And now I can go spread good news. I'm not gonna go tonight because it'll be too late by the time we get out of here, but,
So anyone familiar with block grant funding is that you need to spend it between July 1st of, say, 2019 and June 30th of 2020. So it will be in that time frame. Technically, we can't spend any of the money we want to put towards Judson until July 1st, which doesn't leave us a lot of time to go out and survey the road, design the road up, and get a contractor to build the road before the end of October. So we certainly are planning on surveying it and designing it up as quickly as possible and potentially change ordering it into one of our existing construction contracts that has been awarded with the lowest bidder has been awarded for those things at those unit prices, and we'll see if we can do that. That's the only possible way to get it done this fall. Otherwise, it will be in the spring, and more than likely, it will be in the spring. You could probably safely tell people it will be done in the spring of 2020.
I can appreciate it. You don't have to drive down it every day in the winter though, so. It's a mess, but that's okay. It's closer than it was before.
All right. We want it done right, so all that surveying and engineering has to get done behind it. so.
I understand that, and they'll understand it too.
But it will be done by June 30th. The money will be spent by June 30th of next year, for sure.
A year from now.
Commissioner Perush.
I see in this list of projects that Crooks Road resurfacing is in there.
Yes.
Between what and what?
Between 13 and 14.
Okay,
Yes,
So-
13 to 14.
okay, because between 12 and 13 is a mess too.
Yes, it is. And we keep, that particular project got federal aid dollars, so we were awarded a grant, and that was done 2 years ago. We applied for that grant, and we have to use it in this fiscal year, that we're scheduled for next summer. And we keep applying for these grants, but the formulas have changed, and it's made it more difficult for us to, get enough points to score on their rating system to get those grant dollars. So disappointing to us, but we know the other parts of Crooks need to be redone.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on major streets? Okay.
So we don't curse us again.
Okay, local streets, page 180. Act 51 revenues are budgeted at nearly $1.6 million. We are requesting to have authorization to levy the entire maximum millage allowed, which is the 2.3875, and that should generate about $6.3 million. And This budget includes on page 183, over $5.8 million. And then also on page 181, this fund summary includes in fiscal year 18-19, $1 million transfer from major roads that I just talked about. You will see that in the final budget amendment, the last meeting in June. And then also, the budget you're requested to adopt has $1 million, again, coming from the major road fund. And you'll see there, it'll leave about $1 million left at the end of year 19-20, and then close to zero the following year.
Commissioner Macy.
So you didn't actually do this little orange box, but I think it's the right time to do this. It's local street fund, parkway maintenance. We have $35,000 for rain garden work. I was just wondering where that was.
Page.
175, page 175. Sorry, I think I sent this to the wrong person today.
Right-of-way tree replacement.
Let me see if I can.
It says miscellaneous contracted services include $35,000 for rain garden work and for right-of-way tree replacement.
It's a very good question.
Okay, I'm sorry, I sent it to Greg earlier today, my mistake.
You know where it's at?
Yeah. The right-of-way trees that are included, that's part of our free tree program.
Okay,
And then the rain garden is the maintenance of our rain gardens that we've been putting in all over the city
okay,
for the past 2 years. Getting them, I know they're supposed to be low maintenance, but getting them established does take some time to do, especially when they get washed out occasionally and that kind of stuff. So
Perfect.
that's what that's for.
got it, thank you.
Okay, public safety, page 185. We're requesting to levy the entire maximum authorized, or maximum amount that we can, 3.7963 mils. That will generate approximately $10 million. The forecast includes a $21 million transfer, excuse me, not the forecast, the budget includes a $21 million transfer from the general fund. By the last year, the forecast, the general fund is estimated to transfer $22.75 million to the public safety fund. The revenues also include $540,000 from the DDA for downtown policing services. And page 185, this shows the estimated revenues and expenditures, and as you can see there, through each fiscal year, there is use of fund balance, and currently it's estimated to be about $1.1 million at the end of this fiscal year, and by 23-24, down to about $42,000.
Commissioner Lavasser.
I know the public can't see this. The books that we're looking at, the funds from the DDA for public safety, it's 540,00. We're missing 10 here in the book, but not on the slide that people are looking at. I'm thinking we might need to add one more zero to this, and I'm going to do some follow-up on discussion from last time. Ask Mr. Johnson with regard to what funds total the DDA district is contributing toward public safety when you consider all resources, including that generated by tax.
The DDA got into paying for part of the downtown police patrol some time ago. It used to be at about a $350,000 level, and we actually had to bill them hour by hour for it. They changed that a few years ago when they upped the amount It's now just transferred based on the budget. So we don't, it used to be a major task just to handle the billing. I'm sorry, I'm rolling because I'm not really remembering exactly what your question is.
Yeah, no problem. I'm trying to get a handle on how the contribution into public safety from the taxpayers in the DDA compare with the resources used. So some weeks ago, the chief gave us a report that kind of broke down the number of calls by various districts. My recollection of, there was one district that pretty much mirrored this area, the DDA. Wasn't necessarily exactly the boundaries, but was pretty close. And it looked like it was about 20% of the overall calls was for the, for things in the DDA area. And what I'm looking at is, 20% is very significant. We're talking about public safety budget of roughly 31 million, if I recall. So I mean, you could do the math. That would roughly be $6.2 million worth of public safety services consumed by this district. But how do the numbers actually add up that's being contributed when you add in specifically what the DDA is contributing, when you add in the public safety millage that's charged to those districts that is not captured by the DDA, and when you add in what portion of the general levy that would otherwise go to the public safety that the city's getting that's not going into the specifically to the DDA.
I don't have anything here that lays that out in that manner. It's something that we could do for you. But as you point out, the DDA is based on incremental tax revenue from when DDA's districts were established. There is the base taxes that are not captured. So properties within the district are contributing money that doesn't get captured by the DDA as well.
Yeah, I understand, and knowing what that number is, I mean, the DDA, I believe, dates back to the mid-'70s, so.
It
75.
It actually, but it was created in sections, and there's different pieces of the DDA that have different starting dates. So it didn't all start at with the same date for the original base taxes.
Okay, but I imagine we have somewhere something that shows us what portion of the taxable value is captured by the DDA, and what portion of the taxable value is still available there for the general fund, for the public safety fund, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, we should be able to determine, from those numbers, what funds are we actually receiving in our public safety fund as well as our general fund that could be attributable, so to speak, to help cover the public safety, along with the $540,000 that's otherwise being contributed.
Commissioner Dubak?
Yeah, I think identifying that as the only, I agree, the pre-DDA establishment dollars also going into general funds, important to know. There's also the $750,000 payment in lieu of taxes that we generate from the parking lots. Is that accurate? That goes into general funds?
275.
275.
275. So that's money that we can count as coming from the DDA toward general fund? No?
No, that's coming from parking.
Yeah, but
I mean, from the
downtown
district, it's within the district, right? So if we're talking about how much is contributed financially to the general fund from within the district, that goes into the,
Sure.
that we pay for public safety, and
Yeah.
overwhelmingly public safety is our number one expense. I think it's an important number to know. I think the chief has some insight as to whether or not identifying those call rates as the demand is an accurate way to look at this. Is that a good way to look at the distribution of public safety services, Chief?
It's a data point, but it's not the whole picture. It is a little difficult. And I should remember, the police department doesn't segment out the city. These are just areas of responsibility, but we police the whole city. In that number, some things to remember is the police department and court are in that, what we call beat 5. And that's where all like the desk reports and probation reports. So whether or not that is technically generated in the DDA district, I don't know how you'd want to look at that. if your question is, do you want, like, the resources we allocate downtown, or what are you looking for
Well,
exactly?
if you got this 500-some thousand, and then whatever was pre-DDA plus parking, so let's say it's in the neighborhood of $1 million, that's generous, like conservatively 10 full-time officers. Does the DDA consume 10 full-time officers worth of hours? Do you even break down the numbers that way?
We don't break them down that way. I wouldn't, it'd be hard to say because we do have some officers, when we say we have officers assigned, they're not dedicated to the DDA. They don't just stay there. If they go where the calls are. There's some days when, on afternoons, for example, we always put a 2-officer car in beat 5, which is the rough order of magnitude to mention the DDA. There are some days where they never step a foot in beat 5 because they're needed elsewhere. So we start the day and try to balance all the officers, but then you have to go where the calls are. So, on Fridays and Saturdays, it's been an awful lot of time on Woodward, dealing with the noise complaints on Woodward we've been having, and some success with that. We actually got a thank you note on that one. So, it is very hard to gauge, and I don't know if I'm the best person to say whether or not that's fair or not. I will tell you that although our downtown is still busy, it's less busy than it's been in recent years, particularly the late night crowd. We're seeing a pretty significant drop in some of the disorderly activity that we've had in years past. But it is still busy, though.
Sure. But to your point, you send resources where they're needed. So if there's a crew doing breaking into cars on the street in a certain neighborhood, do you distribute those resources based on who's paying what in taxes or based on the need?
Where the need is. An example would be we've had some arsons in the north end, and we put significant resources in the north end, probably a lot that people wouldn't even have noticed, and that was by design. But we're going to allocate resources where the problems are. And we think that's, using the data, that's the best way to allocate the resources.
Thanks, Chief.
Corey, one of the things that's sometimes confusing is where we do incident reports, or a lot of the things that we report within the downtown are self-generated walkthroughs, that they aren't necessarily a call for service.
That's an excellent point. We do a significant amount of business checks, and they're walking in, and every one of those is counting as a call for that is technically a call for service, even if we generate it. Every traffic stop's a call for service. It's just an easy way to track that. So,
Commissioner Dubon.
So just officers walking the beat is registering as a call of service.
if they stop into a business, and they're required to make certain amount of contacts per month.
All right.
And so we, probably today, I would expect we'd have 2 officers either on a bike or on motorcycles or on foot. And that's their job, is to get out and talk to people and stop in and ask the business owners.
The point I was trying to make is, if an officer stops into Mr. B's, that doesn't necessarily mean there was a problem at Mr. B's.
Right, and the annual MLCC reports will show you the percentage of business checks compared to actual problems, and they're very disproportional. So,
But when we're in the neighborhoods, we're not knocking on every door, going for a visit, and, so you don't get those call for service, like, hey, Mr. Smith, how's business going?
correct.
Everything good? Okay, have a good day. So therefore, you don't get
And-
a call
and
for
those-
service,
those
but when
aren't
we're in the
regu-
downtown, we're just, instead of just sitting in a car, our officers are out engaging the community, engaging the business community, helping understand what's going on, and, preventing issues before they happen.
Yes.
Commissioner Lavasser.
Yeah, I understand that determining exactly what portion of your resources are used in a particular area may be challenging, because you're not always comparing apples to apples. But I do believe it's an important thing to understand, just to have an understanding of what resources are being used and what resources are coming in to pay for those services. Mr. Johnson, is this something that you're able to give us a little bit more insight on, perhaps at our next meeting?
It's much easier to give you the insight into how we're spending money. Trying to really show you exactly what the true demand created by a district is a little more difficult.
understand that, but as far as showing what resources are coming in, I wouldn't think that would be too challenging.
No, that wouldn't be that hard.
Right.
It'd be interesting because I pay for taxes in the neighborhood, but my family and I walk to the downtown. Complicated even one more level, a lot of residents use the downtown. So, you know, it's, you can get pretty clever with the accounting no matter which way you want to go.
Well, yeah, especially when you look at it holistically. I mean, our property values are considerably higher than some of our neighbors, even though we've got very similar housing.
Right.
Why is that?
Especially adjacent to the downtown.
I mean, the downtown really drives our property values. But how much do they drive our property values? How do you measure that?
Right. Commissioner Prush?
Are the two senior housing buildings within that
Beat five?
district?
Yes.
Okay. So my sense is that based upon at least the EMS runs that I see to both one or the other on a more regular basis than they are going into a neighborhood, that adds significantly to your incident reports?
Well, these are police runs. I didn't include fire runs in them, and fire chief is here, he could speak to it, but I would suspect that would be true.
Okay. And then also, the question I have is about Woodward Avenue. I know that living close to it, at least based on what we hear, it's no longer, you know, June to September. It's late February as soon as there's a warm day, all the way into almost Christmas. So are you seeing a gradual increase in need for services based upon the year in which there are activities out there keeps increasing? Because my sense is that you're putting more resources there than you are here.
We are, yes, the first warm day, we have calls there. This, the complaints about noise on Woodward has been, you can look through old annual reports from the 60s and people complained about noise on Woodward. It's always been an issue. I think one of the big problems is the way vehicles are made now, where you can adjust the exhaust on them, spinning a little knob, so you can put it in a mode that you wouldn't use when you're driving to your house, but you can use it on Woodward. And we are trying to be as proactive as possible in, you know, stopping the problems, but it is like herding cats. We've worked with property owners. If they're closed, some of them, the bad ones, we've convinced them to put up fencing so they can't get in there. We get our auxiliaries helping putting up cones for business. We have limited power of attorney, so we can write violations. And when we solve a problem in one area, they'll find some different lot. And initially, the business owners are happy to see them there because, oh, they're going to buy something. And in a very short order, they're like, hey, get these guys out of here. So it is a challenge. And on nice days, you know, we usually have at least 3 officers up there dealing with it. So
We also don't have any jurisdiction on the Berkeley side, and, you know.
Yeah.
It's also, you know, you could be hearing all the noise and whatever, and, you know, Berkeley's not employing a similar policy of working with businesses like we are. It makes it even, you know, we can only tackle 50% of it in some cases.
well, this was, might have been 2 years ago or last year, we had a big meeting with residents and Birmingham and Royal Oak residents. It was all here. The Birmingham chief came down, and all the Birmingham residents wanted them to do what we're doing, and all the Royal Oak residents wanted, everyone has the belief that other community was doing a better job, but, so, we were doing a better job, it's clear.
Clearly, I mean, never a doubt in my mind. Chief O'Donoghue. Any other questions on this particular subject line within the Public Safety Fund? Just argue too, keep in mind, a lot of residents live in Beat 5. And a lot of new residents are coming to live in our downtown, so, you know, it's, we have daytime workers there. We have incremental revenues that are being generated. There's a lot of good, positive things going on, and, yep, the calls for service, let's not overthink those. Just as the chief said, a lot of them are self-initiated just because, you know, community and policing is important to all of us. Okay. Right.
Yeah. Page 188, personnel are increasing in the police cost center due to numerous newer employees moving through their wage and step range. Computer and telecom equipment leases and rentals include $64,000 for new computers, modems, and ID scanners for patrol cars. $200,000 budgeted for body cams and stun devices for the law enforcement officers. This is a lease that includes data storage and video management for the equipment. Uniform clothing and gear costs are expected to increase $10,000 based upon historical cost, and training and education are increasing $5,000 for the newer employees. And then in the motor pool fund, there are 7 replacement patrol vehicles budgeted for approximately $252,000.
Corey does have a presentation to do on the body cams.
Can you give us a little detail on the vehicles real quick? What your expectation is? Are we still moving with the Ford Explorers? Or are you looking at anything creative? No Chief Corvettes, huh?
Well, we actually did get a pickup truck.
Okay.
We have a number of officers who are really big framed, and the Explorers, even though you think an SUV, there'd be plenty of room, there's not. And some of these big officers are handy, so we want to make them happy. And so we got it primarily, it's a pursuit-rated pickup truck, the first time they've had one of those. So we got one and we're testing it out. It really wouldn't be practical for everybody.
Does it have a bed in it, so you can use it for other things if you need to? Not to sleep in a truck bed.
Yeah,
You said
it's a
pickup
full truck
Not
bed.
a bed
And,
like to sleep in, sorry.
We're not going to sleep in it, we're not firemen. Was that?
Ouch.
So, it was too easy, he set it up for me. So, right now, I think it's much easier for our DPW to have a very similar fleet, but we'll probably not make, these will probably be all Ford Explorers, most likely.
Okay. Just curious if there's something new and innovative out there you might be looking at. Commissioner Douglas.
Yeah, you've got $200,000 for the body cams, that's for the first year. What are the subsequent annual costs?
It's we don't have the exact cost down, but it's the same annual fee, $200,000 over 5 years.
Okay.
And it's basically a subscription is what we're getting. And I'm ready to jump into that if that's where we're at.
great.
Okay.
It's 200 a year.
I would like to just introduce, this is Lieutenant Keith Spencer. He runs our Criminal Investigations Division. He's been doing that for the last 3 years. I've often bragged about our detectives and what a good job they do, and he is a big reason for that. He's also the head of and sole member of our Geek Squad, and he's very, very technically savvy, and he's done all the work. So I'll be able to answer easy questions. He'll answer hard questions. But I did want to just kind of get into a little bit, the question might be is why now for body cams? For one, our in-car videos are at end of life. We need to get a replacement very, very soon. And there's really 3 reasons. I had 3 big concerns with body cams. One, the technology wasn't ready. Body cameras are only useful if they're turned on and they capture what you hope to capture. During a critical incident, we cannot give our officers just one more thing now to think about when they should be thinking about what their job is. If something does happen, the camera isn't on, there is a presumption that the officer did something wrong or is hiding something, and primarily that is not the case. And also when the officer does actually activate it, which they usually will activate it in a critical incident after the situation has degraded and you don't get what led up to that, which is critically important. So with the Axon camera, these systems have multiple triggers which automatically activate the body cam, which include the vehicle speed. You can set a parameter. If the vehicle starts going a certain speed, the body camera clicks on. If the light bar goes on, if the gun rack is engaged or disengaged, if the vehicle's in a crash, also if a taser is activated or if a sidearm is unholstered, they automatically turn on. Keith has a demo, and we can demo that for you if you're interested. The camera is also continuously running, so we can get what led up when you activate it during a critical incident or one of those triggers happen, you get the 30 seconds beforehand. We can actually program it up to 2 minutes, but 30 seconds seems to be like the sweet spot most departments are going with. The other big issue is storage and management of that data. We will have massive amounts of new data, and this program has unlimited storage. We can store as much as we want. It's cloud-based, so we're not storing it here. It's all done on the cloud. And the management of that is extremely user-friendly. Right now, every time something happens, the officers have to come to the station, download, their vehicle has to download. As they're writing the report, they've got to pull up the video and burn it to a disk, tag that disk into evidence, it goes into property. Property officer has to manage that, and then if anyone ever wants to see it, property officer has to make a copy. It's a lot of hands in the mix and a lot of things to do with this. You just tag it to the video, it's automatically saved on the cloud, that it counts as evidence. We don't need to be burning disks. We can share this information very easily. It's a web-based solution, so if we have something we want to release to the media, right on the press release can be a link. They can go right to it, and that link can actually have an expiration date if we so chose, so it's good for a week. That aspect is, because that's also Keith's job, that's why he's so excited about it, because it'll make his job very easy. One of the challenges we have is redaction of the video. You need to redact certain things for video, and it's very, very time-consuming and hard to do. And really, Keith is the only one who can do it in the department. So, with this new system, you can tag a person if it's a victim, and this system will follow that face throughout the whole video, so that you just tag it and then it's done. It's really, really cool. It's really, really intuitive, and that aspect we're very excited, and I'll get a little bit more into that. My third concern was my biggest concern, and it's privacy. We police departments, I like to say we deal with the worst people in the world on their worst day, and we deal with the best people in the world in the worst day. And a lot of times that means we are invited into people's house and help mitigate a problem before it gets out of hand. Most of the time, there's no crime. We're just there to help. And quite frankly, it's nobody's business what happened there except for the people involved. Having video changes whether or not someone's interested in it. For example, if we went to the mayor's house, there'd probably be several people, hey, I want to see what happened there, even if it's no one's business. We had a public act that passed in 2017 that really kind of tightened the reins on who's entitled to that video, and it's actually the Law Enforcement Body-Worn Camera Policy Privacy Act. And if we're in someone's private house, it's not subject to FOIA. Just so we're clear, the people involved are still entitled to a copy. Their attorneys would be entitled to a copy. If it's kids, their parents would be entitled to a copy, but their neighbors aren't entitled to a copy. The police were there, I want to see what happened. I thought that was probably the most important thing, because you do this job long enough, you see people at their worst, and it just wasn't fair. So because it's web-based, we're also not, by law, we have to keep all video 30 days. We're going to establish our own policy. It'll be at least 30 days. It'll probably be a little bit longer. But it's a cloud-based system, so we set our parameters, and the videos automatically come off. So there's no one has to, well, this is kind of important. Someone might want to see it. I'll burn a disc. Now there's a disc, and we don't like ever destroying evidence or anything like that, so we'll keep that pretty much forever. This handles that aspect of it very, very well. So that's that. But this system is so much more than just body cams. They come with the new TASER 7. I can explain it to you. I can get into the weeds. I'm excited about this. If it interests you or not, I don't know. But
He's looking for a volunteer.
I think Commissioner Dubuck was expressing interest in being tased.
Once you set it up, we'll show
that could be
how it
reckless rumor.
activates.
Do you guys have to carry it around in that briefcase when you're on patrol? Excuse me. Pardon me. Wow.
It's an inert. You're going to get the body cam out. Let's just show the activation. It's an inert system. This one actually, I guess you don't really have a good reference point because you're not familiar with the current system. But if this is the body-worn camera, this is how the officers wear it on standby mode, and these have an actual warning device if we're inclined to taser somebody. We don't have them on our current one. So telling someone, get down, I'm going to tase you. And if they don't listen, you can give them that as a little warning. As soon as you do that, this is supposed to turn on, and Keith, it darn well better. There it is, okay. All right. So as soon as you do that, as soon as you activate this taser, this automatically turns on. That's the way the system works on all the triggers. And they actually have two cartridges, so if an officer pulls up and there's a fight, you can actually taser two different people at the same time. The cartridges are, they're actually much better. In the old ones, the little wires came from the cartridge they shot out at. These, the wires are stuffed in the projectile. So once it hits somebody, if they roll around, if they try to pull it, they're just going to be pulling slack. And so they're really much harder to dislodge. There's, you know, tasers is a great tool. Sometimes it gets a bad, you can figure that, thank you. It is a great tool. Sometimes it gets a bad rap, but since we've had tasers, we've got officers who don't even bring nightsticks out. Remember, those used to be a thing? I mean, they were, we still issue them, they don't really bring them out. We have very few uses with the nightstick, very few uses with pepper spray, because it's such an effective tool, and there's no long-lasting effect. It's really a great tool.
And that warning sound too, that's something that's a feature where people can hear that before it launches to kind of trigger one's memory about, yeah, remember this sound? Watching that
lets
YouTube
you know
video,
you're
that could be
serious.
you.
If the lasers they don't realize the lasers are on them, the laser dot sight, but that's great. The system also comes with the new video recordings for our new station, for our interrogation and interview room. This is very useful because when we have a case, we need all these videos linked together, and it automatically does that. So when I've got my arrest on the street, I got that video, it's attached to the case electronically, and then when the detective does an interview, that's automatically attached to the case. All your videos right there. It's, like I said, it's intuitive. If an officer's been dispatched or is on the report, their video's automatically getting attached to it. We don't have to hunt them down and find out, oh, this officer was at the scene, we didn't realize it, now we got to find his video or something. So that aspect is great. It comes with, it's called Axon Aware, which is you can actually live stream the body cam. And that really sounded cool. I really don't think we'll use it that often. You cannot have that kind of oversight over a police officer. But what it does is it also has a GPS, so we can know exactly where those officers are at. What happens oftentimes is you might be in a vehicle pursuit. It goes to a different city, they bail out a vehicle, and you're running through Detroit, and you have no idea where you're at. And you're just throwing out landmarks as best you can. Well, we'll have a map, we'll be able to see exactly where the officers are at. If something were to happen to the officer, we'd be able to find them right away. So that GPS and live streaming is a really great feature. It comes with Axon Citizen, which is a web-based solution for citizens giving us information. So if we need video or I got evidence, anything like that, they put it there. It automatically goes right to our report. In dealing with Axon, one of the things they said is if we were to have something tragic at a major event, we would have major, like a lot of video being dumped, they can automatically, on the fly, expand our capacity. So the company is very, very, they understand the needs of police and why we might need that. And, we'd be able to do it, get all that video right away. This is the only body cam system that links up with Clemis, which is our report writing system. I won't bore you from the details, but it really will make us, it's the only one, and it makes everything so much simpler for the officers. So it's going to reduce the downtime. It'll keep officers on the streets so they're not burning these discs. They're announcing just this last couple of weeks, their virtual reality training with the little Oculus headset, and they've got de-escalation things. We just spent an awful lot of money on a big simulator. Don and I have talked about this. The technology for doing that virtual reality training, we're really on the cusp of that, and that will make it training much easier and much easier to do. With the subscription, you get automatically get new body cams at year 3 and new vehicle cameras at year 5. And would be entitled to all the updates. These are their own little computer systems, so they can usually send the updates to them remotely. We are looking to apply for a MMRMA grant, which could be worth between $70,000 and $100,000 to offset this cost. Did I miss anything?
I have a question for you. It sounds great, and a lot of benefits, and I empathize with, it doesn't matter what job you have, kind of doing those non-value added tasks, of trying to collect and organize and file. It's a challenge, and it, distracts away from doing good police work because you have to do this. And but do you see, I guess my question always is this the only game in town? And it's fine if it is, but are we going to have to significantly change our policing practices and then wake up 3 or 4 or 5 years from now and be like, oh, this company went out of business, and now we're stuck with, practices and procedures and everything like that, we don't really have a company to support us anymore. Have you looked at that, evaluated that? Is that something you plan to do through your due diligence?
Yes, most definitely, because our first run of in-car videos in the vehicles, that exact same thing happened. We went with the supplier that all our neighbors, it was a huge, big operation, and they went out of business, and now warranty's no good, those kind of things. I can't say for certain that won't happen. Axon has been growing. Their company is, if you know anything about, it was Taser, then it morphed into Axon, and this body cam is now about 75% of their business. Tasers are down to about 25%. They're very, very responsive to the needs of law enforcement. In fact, it was about 4 years ago, myself, Under Sheriff McCabe, and Chief Mayor out of Troy had a meeting with the CEO and founder, Rick Smith, about our goal was try to get kind of competitive pricing for Columbus communities, like view us like New York City, because Columbus' footprint is so huge. And in our talks, he was really interested because Columbus is a very unique report writing and information system, and those talks are why this is the only system that can link up with Columbus. It was based off that, and he sent people up. We turned them over to the Columbus Geek Squad, and they ran with it, and it worked very well. Our current in-car video is WatchGuard. It's a very good system. They're a very good company. Keith has done the research. It is still very expensive, not quite as expensive, but they don't get a lot of the features that Axon is offering. The back end stuff, the managing of this data, which is critical, no one comes close to what Axon is doing. They also don't. You're buying it, and then you own it. It's not the subscription based,
Right.
But. Do you remember how much WatchGuard was? It was expensive still, not this expensive, but it was expensive. I don't recall off the top of my head. We have looked at some others, but I think WatchGuard and Axon are probably the biggest companies.
So in your opinion, this will, and I don't want to say savings because we're not saving, but the highest and best use of our policing hours can be spent doing policing versus doing administrative work, and this is significantly going to help with achieving that goal, from detectives to interrogators to folks on the beat.
Patrol officers,
this is going to really help, and then I would imagine even too when it comes to prosecuting cases, what I mean, with the evidence and everything like that, expediting cases, much quicker because the evidence is much stronger, one way or the other. Okay. Yeah, I was impressed that they have thought of so many different things, from the siren to the speed. They put a camera, a GPS in there, an accelerometer, and basically said, okay, what are the typical trigger points, and, you know, then connecting a database to it, and then connecting to Clemis is actually pretty interesting as well.
That's really,
huge.
that's really one of the game changers for us,
Yeah.
is because now the report, and we know the video's there, and it does it all automatically, and it's great for us, so.
Perfect. Any other questions for the chief on this technology? Commissioner Dubak.
Sure. This is something we've been nudging on for the last few years, and you'd expressed all those concerns. So I'm really glad you found a product that you're comfortable with, that you think is going to bring the value that we were hoping to see in it. Curious, one, how do the officers feel about it? Are they optimistic about it?
Anybody in law enforcement looks at it as inevitable, right? I mean, we needed a system that works for them, and you know, you'd probably get mixed opinions depending on who you're talking to, and there's probably a generational aspect to that too. I will tell you, I've had several meetings with groups of officers, and you know, police officers are held to a higher degree of scrutiny and accountability than any other municipal employee. No, I don't think anyone even comes close, and this is adding another layer to that. The question was asked is, well, you know, and it might have just been a little venting, but it was, why don't other municipal employees have to walk around with cameras, right? And you know, we have the authority. Only one has the authority to take people's freedoms away. It's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
We should be held to a very high standard. But what happens in the back of an ambulance is pretty darn important, right? The customer service you receive, or things like that, is pretty important. Whether or not these code violations are actually violations is pretty important. So, you know, I would say that the officers, it's mixed, and but they're not. I don't think they knew it was coming, and I think for the most part they're accepting it. It is a system that there's a lot of concerns that I really don't want to get into right now, but there's things like their own personal privacy when they're taking their break and things like that, and all those have been resolved, and so that issue, I think, is one of some of the biggest concerns.
Okay. I just want to make sure that, I agree, I think it's inevitable, and I think, you know, we have a top-notch police force, and I think that this is only going to guarantee that the public has access to view that whenever there is an incident. So I think it's a best practice to protect our officers and the public. But I do want to make sure that your officers have whatever resources and supports they need to make sure that they're adjusting properly to the new status quo, and that they're made to be comfortable about their own privacy when they're not actually interacting with citizens.
Yes.
So is it all smart equipment? Is it Bluetooth?
It's Bluetooth. The actual body cams, it's a standalone camera. So, for example, if I've got an officer on a bike or on a motorcycle or on foot patrol, I don't have the ability to record anything, right? But now on Art Speeds and Needs Foot Patrol, they can all have they all get issued their own one. You can have it. I wouldn't expect or ask them, it's not going to be on 24/7, but it's in standby mode. So if something were to happen, you know, you usually just tap it, click it on, and then it's clear when it's on, and so that it wouldn't accidentally be recording or something like that. So, the battery lasts a very long time. I think it's 12 hours we get out of it. So, it's a very, very good system. We're very, very comfortable with it.
Okay. And then, so when you pull your taser, when you unholster your firearm, when you're in a crash, when you speed up, what if it's a physical altercation? Or is it safe to assume if it's a physical altercation, one of those things has been done?
Well, there's a chance that if it's a physical altercation, one of those hasn't triggered. They are researching how to have, like, basically tumbling trigger, but they haven't figured that out yet. But if tasers, I mean, they're working, I call them taser, but they're Axon. They're working on things like they want just the officers to be able to just dictate reports. So they sit in their car, they review their video, they dictate the report right on the video and automatically transcribes it. They hold the license up to the camera, automatically puts it into your report. That stuff isn't here yet, but those are the kind of innovations they're looking at. But right now, like, for example, if an officer's walking and he gets jumped and knocked down, we wouldn't have that data, so.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Chief. Thanks for bringing this forward and putting this in this budget. I think it's really important. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you, Keith.
Before I go.
All right, Ms. Rudd?
Okay, page 193. Fire suppression, miscellaneous building repair and maintenance services are increasing $38,000 to replace all the overhead doors at Fire Station 1. And then there's additional capital, thermal imagers for $53,000, concrete replacement at Station 1 for $15,000, and a new fire hose for $10,000. In addition, in the motor pool fund, which we'll get to possibly later this evening, replacement of the E1 pumper tanker for $782,000 it's estimated. And then also 2 SUVs to be replaced for a total of $74,000.
Questions for Ms. Rudd?
We do have the
Dave?
chief here. Dave?
You get the final word.
I'll have a question. He's gonna come up.
should adopt all of that as written. Do you have questions for me, huh?
I wasn't gonna make it come up, but now that you're up there, I'm just curious, what happens to the old pumper?
The old, well, okay, what I would like to do, what I recommended doing, is that a little loud? Is we currently have 6 pumpers. I'd like to reduce that to 5. We have a 1999 pumper that hasn't been in service for some time, since even before I was chief. It's a lot to maintain and house, and I just, frankly, I don't see us using it because it leaks about half as much water as it pumps. So what we would do is retain that and keep it as a reserve engine. It's just a lot. The last time this happened, it ended up going the millage route and replacing replacing the whole fleet. That's probably not the, as I tell Mr. Johnson all the time, I don't specialize in municipal finance, but I can't imagine that's the best way to do it. So this kind of allows us to, kind of update the fleet incrementally, take our most troublesome engine, take it out, and start taking some of these, they're all at the 10, 11-year mark, start taking the ones that have taken the most use, moving those into a more reserve role and replacing them incrementally as opposed to all at once. That was the idea anyway.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions for Chief Cummins?
Dave, did you want to talk about inspection a little bit?
Well, inspection is an area where we, frankly, we've fallen short, not in any reason due to the people that we have working in there, but you guys all know the building that's going on around town. There's a lot of jobs, and we have 2 people to do it. And Mr. Johnson some time ago said, if you can find a way to pay for a thing, I'd like to hear it. I know that, there's different ways, and what I did is I wanted to put something together. I know that years ago, there's multiple ways that different municipalities do it. One way is they use business licenses, because then it doesn't matter if you absolutely get to that building every year. Those funds are funds that you can now count on. Other places do it based on the size of your building, which seems extremely fair, but I got a feeling that several business owners that have large buildings in the city may have a problem with that. So I threw several options together, but the main thing is we're only getting 20, depending on what year and depending on whether or not we're training somebody, which right now we're not, we're getting anywhere between 20 and 30% of our buildings inspected annually. We do have buildings that do get inspected every year, and while most people probably don't want their businesses inspected, what we find is that the buildings that we see every year, the gas stations, the LLCs, the places that we go into often and we see every year, it's very quick, it's very painless. They know what we're looking for, they're usually ready, and it's very fast. The places that we don't get into, like we have some apartment complexes that we haven't been into for some time. And now Inspector Lamborse has been making a push to get through those buildings. We find a lot of violations, and there's a lot of costs associated with getting those buildings to where they need to be. So what we'd like to do is get in there more often, keep the violations down, keep the costs down by getting in there a little bit more often, letting everybody know where they need to be. And it also gets us more compliant with our fire code, which says we're supposed to be in there every year in all the buildings. That's probably not realistic. I don't know anybody who's doing it, but I'd like to get us a lot closer than where we're at. Because it's not just the inspections. I mean, we're not getting enough public education done. I mean, we do try to get into senior high-rises once a year and try to, you know, give them something as far as what to expect from us, what we'd like them to do, that sort of thing. But we could be doing more, frankly. And I'm trying to make, we're trying to be the best fire department we could possibly be. So that'd be one of the things where we could improve.
Commissioner Macy.
So, but you're not adding anybody, so did the business license, size of business, you're still deciding what you're gonna do, like, that's
Well,
possibly
I-
a future ask?
Of course, I would love to add.
This isn't
but-
something that's in this year's budget, this is something that we're
Under
talking about.
consideration.
And I just wanted him to kind of get the commission aware of it, so that we don't take you by surprise when, and if we do bring something back that,
And the idea, I think I understood, was that it would be paid for, this new inspector person would be paid for by business licenses of
well, that
some-
was the
What-
idea.
Have a source of revenue
The
for it.
problem is gonna be is our businesses are not used to paying for fire inspections.
Yeah, gotcha.
And it would be a significant fee.
Okay.
Any other questions for Chief Cummins?
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
Okay, and then real quickly, page 197 is the ambulance cost center. And miscellaneous expenditures are budgeted at $10,000, and this is somewhat of a new expenditure for the quarterly ambulance assessment that's required by the state of Michigan.
Commissioner Douglas?
Is that an unfunded mandate?
Probably.
So do we have to pay it?
I'm not aware that we've ever collected anything under that Headley guarantee, but.
Maybe Chief Cummins, I had just a quick question, not to go too much into detail, but I know it's not in the budget, but are you looking into doing any sort of analysis with mutual aid and things of that nature this year?
We try to keep an eye on that all the time. We look at the numbers, and I've talked to Mr. Johnson several times about it. We do have some ideas if it gets to be too much as to things we can do to minimize the impact on the city, keep our resources in town where we need them. So we do have options if the demand gets to be too much.
That's something you're keeping a close eye on year to year?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions for Chief Cummins? Our younger, stronger,
I'm older than
more handsome chief? Oh, wow, even worse. Okay, Ms. Rudd.
Okay, page 202, solid waste fund. The maximum authorized levy that we could levy is 2.8772 mils. However, as you heard the first evening of budget work sessions, we are recommending a temporary reduction, and that would be 1/4 mil to 2.6272 mils. Use of fund balance is proposed to offset that reduction. SACRA has contracted with GFL for 10 years through 2027, and that is a 3% increase annually, so that's what we have budgeted. Solid waste disposal service, as a separate line item, is increasing $10,000 relative to the original budget last year due to contractual increases for tree removal services.
Ms. Rudd, I know we had talked about this before when we were in the revenue section, and, you know, we built a pretty healthy balance in the solid waste fund, which is really the impetus to reduce the rate. we still have a pretty healthy fund here, going into 2021, out to 2020, I mean, 1.3 million still. And I know we're exploring looking at different waste removal options with a, more ergonomically and larger, rat-proof garbage container. But, speaking of that, on that vein, and I don't know what it would cost, but have we looked at in the past, and this is probably a question for Mr. Rassel, we used to have the spring cleanups, anything and everything out there, one day in the spring, throw your tires, your paint cans, whatever it may be, the junk in your yard. Is that something that far exceeds, scheduling a one-time pickup for that, what we have in the balance, or is that something that's manageable and reasonable within this that we could explore and maybe talk about for this next year?
It's more exhausting human resources than doing the cost factor. You do have the cost for it, but when we did it the last time, not only did it include everyone from GFL contracting with them to run a special cleanup as well, it required the DPS to work basically 5 consecutive Saturdays doing nothing but garbage pickup, because a lot of the items that are put out for bulk pickup are concrete, heavy logs, items that you can't put in a trash pack compactor because it will damage the packer. You have to pick it up, and you need front-end loaders and dump trucks, not necessarily garbage trucks.
Okay, so it's not a GFL, coming out and
It's not a
utilizing their.
GFL.
Do they
It's
have
not-
that service available where we would not
I don't
have to use?
think they have that. A couple of times we did it with DPS personnel, and that was, and it's 5 consecutive Saturdays at one of the busiest time of the years, like right now.
But if that's something we wanted to look at in the next fiscal year, and maybe it's not the right thing to do because of the human resources involved, and that means that they're not doing other stuff, but let's just say theoretically we found a magic solution to get it done, I would imagine it wouldn't cost $5.155 million to do it.
No, it would not.
Okay, so we don't have to, I thought maybe do we put something in the budget or not, but I think,
But once again, there are methods for residents to dispose of all of these items at minimal cost to them, if any.
Yeah, and maybe it's a marketing campaign, maybe it's something different, like a creative solution. I just thought when I look at this, I think there's opportunities here to, people over years build up refuse in their backyard and other places because they're not exactly sure how to get rid of it, what to do. And, that might be something, I know it's not in our strategic plan, but if it's something that, we want to consider in the next fiscal year, if it, push comes to shove, there's enough money in here to think of something creative to address that. But that's a discussion for another time. Your points are well understood and well heard, Mr. Russell.
Thank you. I have a question for Mr. Russell.
Yep, Commissioner Mason.
So there is a method to dispose of like concrete and large logs, things you discussed?
Yes, ma'am. If they go to the soccer website and use the Waste Wizard, it'll give them instructions and items, suggestions on how to get rid of that properly.
The Waste Wizard.
Waste Wizard, I like that.
I know what I'm going to be for Halloween next year. Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you, Mr. Russell. Ms. Rudd?
On page 203, also, I just want to point out in the fund summary, so in 1920, the budget year we're looking at right now, there'd be an estimated reduction in fund balance by about $370,000. And then I just want to point out, the very next year, you'll see a significant reduction in fund balance of $2.2 million. That is based upon an estimation of spending about $1.8 million on residential property garbage bins. It's just an estimate. There's no real precise plan formulated at this point. It's just like a placeholder. So everyone was aware that the substantial fund balance, part of that was potentially reserved for a project that management wanted to bring forward. And then the remaining 3 years, Of the forecast, there's about a $500,000 use of fund balance in each of the years, and that is also assuming that the millage rate will continue to be temporarily reduced. But as you see, once we get to a point where we feel comfortable that, the balance is appropriate, the thought would be that it would increase back up to the maximum authorized. Because you can see they're running at about a $500,000 operating deficit, and that's about the amount that we are not collecting through the lower millage rate.
Okay. Yep.
Page 205, just real quickly, the Indigent Defense Fund, that's our new fund for providing attorneys for the people that are needing defense over at the court system. And revenues from the state grant and contracted worker services are anticipated to increase for 1920 due to the costs for the manager that'll be assigned to coordinate.
Okay.
And then page 210 is the library fund. Expenditures include $10,000 in office and furniture equipment to purchase new furniture as part of the space study, with possibility of rethinking the interior design of the building. $21,500 is budgeted for repair of the restrooms and for interior painting. $8,000 increase relative to the original budget for 18-19 for computer supplies and parts to continue purchases related to technology and upgrade the library's computer and software, and $5,000 increase in data processing service due to an increase in the library's automation software. And then there is $10,000 budgeted for downloadables due to the continued high demand by patrons for those for more titles. And then this increase is partially offset by a $5,000 decrease in electronic resources and $2,000 decrease in video and audio resources following usage trends in 2018-19. And then just real quickly, on page 210, you can see the fund summary. The estimated forecast illustrates that fund balance is healthy. However, there will be capital needs that are not reflected in the expenditures. Page 221, State Construction Code. Revenues are decreasing relative to the current year adjusted budget due to conservative budgeting as construction activity is fairly unpredictable and permit revenue can vary greatly from year to year. Total expenditures are decreasing due to a one-time transfer of cash to the WROK project fund for this function's allocation of the square footage for the new city hall. And then printing and document duplications increasing $10,000 due to the increased amount of scanning and digitizing for documents that they anticipate will take place in 1920. And then training costs are expected to increase $2,000 for the filling of some current vacancies. So they're anticipating the new employees needing some additional training. 222 has the fund summary. And as you can see there, ending fund balance is healthy. And that's why it's recommended that the fund balance be reduced and with a potential reduction in the permit fees. Page 230, Senior Citizen Services Fund.
I guess, sorry.
Go back.
Sorry. I'm just wondering, so we talked about already the last time about the fact that this fund is healthy and growing healthier. But I feel like we also have talked about the need for more inspectors. Is this, does it not work that way to be able to hire from this from this fund?
Well,
Or am I wrong about need?
we're having issues in hiring inspectors. Has been the problem. It's not that we necessarily need more than we have authorized.
Okay. It's filling the positions.
Yeah, it's filling the positions is the problem.
What would they like, $5 million? If we haven't, no.
I'm sure they would, but
Okay, that's all.
my problem with trying to buy my way out of that problem is that in this environment, everything you do affects everything else you do.
Yeah.
And if we do an increase for inspectors, every other bargaining unit's going to want the same thing, even though it's not the same situation.
Sorry, what are we on now?
Okay, page 230 is the Senior Citizens Fund. Revenues are expected to increase due to additional smart municipal community credits that has been awarded. That is allowing for additional senior rides on Mondays and Wednesdays, and are projected to increase ride fee revenues by $1,000 as well. Contracted worker services decreasing $13,000 as the new chef is budgeted in part-time wages. And then payments to the recreation fund for space rental will go to zero, which is a $49,500 decrease relative to the current fiscal year, as this senior activity at the Salter Center will be considered recreation related.
So I don't get that. Could you tell me a little bit more with it?
Yeah, do you want to?
I'll let you do it.
Probably the last 4 years or so, the recreation, this fund was paying this rent over to the recreation fund. Because at the Salter Center, there was a significant amount of senior activity going on throughout the day. So there was an estimate of this amount, and so the recreation fund was, they're exchanging that amount. At this time, the recreation fund is doing quite well.
Okay. All right, that pretty much explains it. Thank you.
Commissioner Dubak.
Thank you, Mayor. Is now the appropriate time to talk about the senior center? Is this the right cost center? Okay. So I know Commissioner Macy raised in our last meeting the senior center parking lot. DPS director has mentioned that it is something that's on our to-do list this cycle, in the next cycle or two. My understanding is that it has become an issue. Ms. Gombarski, if you would. So the pavement in front of the senior center, the parking lot, it's on your radar as an issue that needs to be addressed? Is that accurate?
It is an issue. There's been incidents where people have been hospitalized and major incidents, so it is a priority.
Okay. That sounds like a priority to me.
Yes.
If it's a safety
The crumbling
issue.
of the curb and the sidewalks over the course of the tenure that I've been there.
Okay. But the paving of the lot itself is an issue?
No, it is, when I first arrived in 2009, that was the first capital improvement that was being done at the facility. It was not a complete resurfacing. It was, I think, just some repairs or so redone, but it was through community block grant money, which no longer they can use those funds for a repavement or a parking lot.
Right.
It is on the radar, but it is not, the concrete is more priority right now than the parking lot.
Okay.
But I do have a 5-year plan in capital improvements for myself. That's not really in a budget. We try to do one capital improvement each year at the center. So it's not hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Understood. Okay. It seems to me if there's a public safety issue arising from the quality of that lot, not just the lot, but not just the sidewalk, but the lot, and we have the opportunity for a twofer, given that lot it abuts park, right? There's the park on the south side.
There's parks on both sides.
Correct. So there seems to be an opportunity for us to, one, invest in our senior center, which if the lot is deteriorating, where we have a high density of seniors, that seems like a risk that we don't need to put off for a year or two if it is due to be updated, and also an opportunity to incorporate some of our sustainability features, given that it's abutted by green space. We can do rain gardens or bioswales as a part of that, because my understanding from the engineers right now, that lot has no detention. It does have catch basins, which means all the water running off that lot is running right into our sewers when we have major storm events.
And that's the problem.
So we have an opportunity to, one, make it safer, and two, invest in some of our environmental priorities. So that, to me, seems like something that is worth investing in to the extent that we do have the capital available. I spoke to the engineer and DPS director. They think that this is something that can be done. And I thank Commissioner Macy for raising it 2 weeks ago. I'd like to move to incorporate repaving the lot at the senior center and incorporating green water runoff into that. I don't have a cost figure on it, but I'd like staff to bring that back in the final budget.
I mean, green infrastructure as part of that.
As part of the parking lot, yeah, to make sure that the water is going into, we're minimizing the amount of water running directly into our sewers.
Minimize, if not eliminating, the runoff into our sewer system. Commissioner Macy?
Very enthusiastic second.
Okay. Commissioner Prush?
I have a question. The $27,000 for the sidewalk and curbing concrete replacement that's already in the budget, is that just the sidewalk that's right along the front, or is that other areas as well?
It's the entire front of the building.
Okay. From end to end?
Correct.
My recollection is that it goes from end to end.
It goes, right, and it wraps around to the, like the back entrance.
Right. Is it not only a matter of repair, but also a matter of width? It just seems narrow to me. Or is it just deterioration and repair here?
It's just the deterioration of the concrete.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Lavasser?
I just want to make sure I get some clarification. When staff brings us back numbers, basically we would have a number, this is what it would cost simply to redo what we have versus to put the green infrastructure in place. This would be the additional cost. And that would be my expectation of how staff brings it back to us.
Yeah, an estimate to put into the budget for.
Okay,
Greg,
thank
do
you.
you have an estimate already?
I just have an estimate based on what my golf paving project is, around the same size lot.
He said that between $125,000 and $200,000 was the number.
Golf.
Closer to the 200?
Closer to 200.
Closer to 200,000.
And that does not include detention, which.
Without the sustainability features.
So we're not $10,000 and we're not $1 million. We're somewhere in that 150
That is a
to
great
250
assessment.
range. Any improvements you'd like to make to the parking lot, just with your experience as far as, I mean, just resurfacing it, keeping it the same is fine, or are there any things like, and I know I'm probably a budding law here, in standards, but things that would make it easier for patrons to get from the parking lot to the center? Like a different layout, or is it all working pretty well except for the condition of the pavement?
It's just the condition. There's 110 parking spaces, so it's pretty adequate for the facility.
Okay. And where they're at, enough handicap spots?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We got a motion on the table. Is there any further discussion? With none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Macy and Commissioner Dubak.
Okay, on page 230 as well, there is the fund summary, and I just would like to point out, each year there's anticipated use of fund balance, and this fund in particular is usually pretty close, coming in to right on budget. So you see about next year, 58,000, and then it decreases a little bit, but goes back up. By the end of the forecast, it's anticipated that 450,000 may be needed to be transferred from the general fund in order to balance the revenues and expenditures. They'll still be about 280,000, but if we're doing a parking lot, it might be about zero, so. Okay, animal shelter is on page 235. Dog pound fees and sales are budgeted to increase, as efforts to focus on fundraising is going to be conducted. Projected fiscal year 18-19 and recommended fiscal year 19-20 will utilize nearly the entire fund balance for this fund. The forecast illustrates that expenditures will need to be decreased significantly or revenues increase to cover expenditures. As adopting a budget that will cause the fund to be in a deficit position is in violation of the law. Part-time wages are decreasing approximately $16,000 relative to the projected fiscal year due to necessary budget reductions to balance the budget and prevent the fund from going into the deficit position. Something that this fund does not, what this budget does not have is the $45,000 that is in the CIP to repave the animal shelter drive. And if I just flip over to this screen, I just want to point out again in different words, if you look at the 1920 column and the expenditures at about 128,000, they had to be reduced. They were cut in order for that ending fund balance to be in the positive. So if you look at their expenditures for this year, they're 144,000. They cannot spend what they spent this year because they just don't have the fund balance to utilize it unless their revenues increase relative to what's budgeted there at 87,000.
So Ms. Rudd, you have 87,000 budgeted there. What is the basis? I mean, except for last year, it shows, or this year rather, 123,370. I can't really, and I forget what it looks like in the past for previous years, but how does that 87,000 come to? Is that a reliable number? Is that a consistent number? Is that an average? And then last year we happened to get a bump in something. Help me understand that a little bit.
18-19 we had significant bump. The golf outing, 26,000 of proceeds were donated, as well as there was a lot of donations that year. If you look at the prior years, they're much lower. So especially when there's expenditures so high, I can only budget revenues that are reasonably assured. If there's not a trend, there's just a one-year hiccup there, then really we need to budget revenues that are more like the average, closer to the average. So that's where the 87,000 comes from.
I just point out, a number of years ago, we had a resident pass away who left over $100,000 to the animal shelter. They've been living off that. The last 2 years, the police golf outing has donated about $30,000 each year. But for years, we've been trying to get the board to work harder at, we knew this problem was coming, and they need to work harder at the fundraising aspect of it.
So I always had a thought too, and I don't know if it's possible. We charge for dog licenses, right? Cat licenses. Well, I don't think we do for cat licenses. Do we just dogs?
Yeah.
But my question is, I imagine if any one of us lost our dog, the animal shelter would probably be the first place that someone would take our loved one to and scan the chip and find it. Has there ever been any consideration as part of our dog licensing fees to tap on a little extra in order to help support the animal shelter to some extent? Because those, to me, seem to be, you either got your dog from the animal shelter, a lot of people do, or your dog might end up there one day. It seems like an interesting concept to pay, the more dogs we have, the more likely they end up in the shelter, and we covered it via at least part of it through licensing fees. I don't know enough to make a difference, but I'm sure on a $7 license, if it went to $9, people wouldn't bark at it, pardon the pun. Or am I barking up the wrong tree? I don't know.
There's gotta be a response.
Go, Randy.
Come on, guys, give me a bone here. Oh, man.
He's using them all. Hurry, Randy.
Oh, gee, this is pretty rough.
Oh, gosh. Any more, I'm gonna take a walk.
There's been no discussion of doing something like that in the time I've been here, so that goes back to 2005.
It's a good idea.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I like
Even a
it.
voluntary.
Yeah.
I mean, you could, yes, exactly. Even if you said on the form, would you like to donate $5 to the, you know, we could give them one of those little paws that you put up on the thing.
Yeah.
There was, when I first got here, it was very shortly after the commission had decided that to stop funding it with city money. And there was a very active group, and I don't think it was just the Animal Shelter Committee, but there was a lot of activities to raise money for the animal shelter going on. A lot of very unrelated type of activities, like bar crawls that were supporting the animal shelter. And that kind of stuff has just kind of slowly faded away, as I think people have felt less concern about the survival of the shelter.
Ms. Hallis, I'm gonna put you on the spot, and I appreciate if you have no idea what the number is, but how many dog licenses do we process every year?
Just over.
I did put you on the spot. Is it in the hundreds, or are you thinking the thousands?
Hundreds.
Okay. But
And right now, our rates are, we actually have the same fees as Oakland County does. We just, every time we look to do a increase in our rates, we're always looking at what they have as well, so.
because you can register your dog either with
Oakland
Oakland County
County.
or the city?
Although we have an ordinance that if your dog is in the city, it's supposed to be registered with the city.
Right. Be something to look at, I mean, even if it was, you know, a few $1,000s coming from it. Wow, that was identical. I'm gonna go with Commissioner Douglas.
Yeah, we have a lot of devoted volunteers at the animal shelter, but their interest and skill is in taking care of animals, not fundraising. I've sort of made a side note, we had in our last discussion, you know, identifying roles for the Royal Oak Community or Civic Foundation. Certainly, the animal shelter is already in the foundation's scope of work in that it's one of our legacy roots organizations. But it does seem to me that if we're going to continue, if we want to continue to have our own animal shelter, we need to do something more to fund it. And that may be some sort of coaching or assistance from our development staff or fundraising efforts by the Civic Foundation. But at some point, we're going to have that discussion that we had back when you know, the city first agreed not to fund the shelter, and I'm assuming they did that because Oakland County could take it over. We could hand this over to the county tomorrow,
Well,
and
when we say would take over the function. They wouldn't operate our shelter.
Right.
Right.
okay,
The situation would be is they would provide animal control. They would do the licensing. We would stop doing our own licensing, so they'd get all the licensing revenue. And the shelter would be the shelter, the existing Oakland County shelter, which is a very nice facility, but it's,
so any animals, for example, lost or found, or as to say found in Royal Oak would wind up in Pontiac.
yes.
Okay, thank you, I guess.
Commissioner Lavasser.
I think Mayor Pro Tem Douglas is correct. There's a lot of very dedicated volunteers who have very big hearts when it comes to the animals and the animal shelter. Fundraising is not their greatest talent. They, you know, the Animal Shelter Committee, though, is very much aware of the finances that we're discussing here tonight, and they're certainly exploring options on how to get additional funds in. But again, it's not necessarily their expertise. It certainly would be helpful to have someone with greater expertise in fundraising to assist them.
Commissioner Dubak.
Just wondering, we've got a grants manager on board who's already proven very effective. I'm just wondering if the needs of the animal shelter is something. I know that, you know, we're not providing a regular funding stream, but is that something that we would allow for her time to be dedicated to identify and pursue a couple of grants to help shore up funding for the
I can
animal
have our
shelter.
luck. It's not the kind of thing that you usually find grants for.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
very few grants are really able to be used for funding operations. They're usually able to be used for funding capital expenditures.
Yeah, we're getting a new cages or painting the
Yeah.
building or, you know.
And also, that's often the case with your public fundraising, too. People are more interested in making contributions for something tangible that they can see, rather than paying the salary of the person who cleans up the messes.
Well, I think, you know, I mean, right now, this sounds interesting, but, you know, we've had the ability to figure out a way to balance the needs of the animal shelter year over year since the decision was made. I'm confident that we'll find some ability to do that this year, but I do think a longer-term discussion, you know, throughout the next year, maybe taking some leadership cues from the representatives sitting on the animal shelter committee to kind of look at some, you know, non-traditional alternatives to help not just with fundraising, but, you know, things that the city can do to, you know, support the shelter as well. I can tell you if the shelter has a terrible fundraising year, you know, the city's not gonna, you know, close it up. But at the same time, you know, it's been non-tax dollar supported for a long time. And, you know, it has an appeal unlike some other, you know, if you said, hey, let's do a fundraiser for the parking fund, I'm sure you'd get zero contributions. So, you know, this is one of those items that, you know, in a way is a volunteer tax, you know, that seems to work with people that are passionate about it. I know my wife and I and our family, we find ways to figure out contributions because it's important to us, but, you know, something that I think we should keep on the radar. I know we've set our strategic goals for the year, but I think with this one, coming up with a few more creative alternatives like grants, license fees, fundraising experts, I think that's important to talk about this year. Okay. Commissioner Prush.
I wonder if organizations like the Humane Society or some of the breeder associations that are nonprofits would be able to give us some advice, free advice, hopefully, as to fundraising ideas and things that might appeal as ways of raising money that have worked in other communities or that seem to work with the pet community in terms of, you know, triggering a willingness to donate additional dollars. I don't know if there's organizations out there that might be willing to give some advice, but it would seem to me that maybe some of those other major organizations that are pet-related might be able to help.
I think that's a really good idea. They have their models themselves, you know, subscription. I mean, the Humane Society, Michigan Humane Society has a whole lot of expertise on that as well. It's a
Yeah.
good point, Commissioner Prush.
We should have thought of this on Monday when they were here.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
They stuck it out until the end.
That's true.
Bless their hearts.
I know.
Okay. Any
I
other
know that they
questions?
have walks. I know the Humane Society has walks. Because our niece has participated in it. They raise money that way. You know, she gets pledges from us and a lot of others, raises money for the Humane Society, so.
I've heard of like Treat of the Month where people bake dog cookies and stuff and, you know, you pay $10 and you get a bag of homemade dog cookies mailed to your house and the proceeds go to charity. I've heard of that before.
Yeah, there's some.
So, the idea that came to me today was we were doing one of our Aging in Place Task Force focus groups. And one of the women at the hilarious table that I was working at said, they praised our firefighters and our EMS workers extensively. They love them, they worship them. And one of them said, gee, we should have a calendar of our firefighters, and maybe we should have a maybe we should have a calendar of firefighters holding puppies and kitties.
But definitely not firefighters holding commissioners, right?
I might pay a bonus for that.
I think that's a different audience.
Commissioner Lavasser.
That's actually been a point of discussion at the animal shelter I don't know if it was Victoria who brought that up, but she's been kind of the champion of that issue at the animal shelter. It's basically just needed someone who basically was going to take it by the horns and get it done. I heard some rumors that, there's some challenging getting the firefighters to commit to it, and I suggested that we simply tell them that, the police officers are all in, so that might get them motivated to compete there.
The public safety calendar.
Yes.
I'll pass, but we'll see if there's interest.
You say that now.
Got a kitten with your name marked on it, Chief O'Donoghue. All right. Anything else on the animal shelter fund?
I think that's a good place to end.
Okay.
Page 238, police grants, just real quickly, revenues will be down due to grants received this year from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security for police roadblock barricades and forfeiture sharing funds received from participating in the federal narcotics enforcement team that are not reasonably assured next year. There's approximately 50% decrease in Act 251 drug forfeitures projected for next year, and then a $1.2 million transfer to the WROK project is budgeted for the police station. 248, page 248, DDA, this is the TIF fund. Personnel costs are increasing for the potential for the newer employee to move through their pay merit range. Miscellaneous contracted services includes a budget for the following. Downtown maintenance, $340,000. Holiday lights, $315,000. EMC signs, $200,000. Alley improvement program, $300,000. Decorative street lighting, $1 million. Replacement brick pavers, $150,000. North Side library improvements, $50,000. Traffic signal replacement arm, $1.2 million. And the build out of the lower level space at the Center Street parking structure, $300,000. In addition, $1,237,000 in total is being transferred out to the general fund. $737,000 is for the downtown portion of the WROK debt. And then $500,000 is a one-time transfer to help fund the police/city hall project utilities. $540,000 will continue to be transferred over to the police for police services in the downtown, and then also $582,000 is budgeted to be transferred to the auto parking fund to pay a portion of the new Center Street structure debt.
Commissioner Lavasser.
If I'm looking at this correctly, this is one of the few situations where there's actually a fund balance that's growing over the course of time, and we're anticipating it will continue to grow except for a one-time blip here.
Correct, because of all those projects that I just rattled off. Yeah, if you look at page 248 has the fund summary. Basically, two things have to happen. Either it's spent or it has to be redistributed back to the taxing authorities from which we collected the TIF from. So that really isn't going to grow. But again, I'm just extrapolating out kind of what's happening already, but taking out the specific capital projects. So what you see in theory, it would grow. But again, at some point, if we don't spend it, it has to be distributed back to the various taxing authorities.
If we were to determine that the DDA really ought to be contributing more than the $540,000 per year, what would be the process for making that happen? $540,000 for public safety, that is.
Process is to convince the DDA to budget that amount and approve that expenditure. We've done that before.
And what would you need from us, the people here in this room right now, to investigate that?
Just some lobbying.
Pardon me?
Just some lobbying.
With regard to what we're doing here today, working on the budget, is there anything that you need at this time in order for that to happen. I mean, right now, we're still waiting on some numbers. We want to look at some numbers and make a determination whether or not what they're contributing is appropriate. If we determine that it's short, is there anything that we need to do in this budget process?
No.
To address that?
No.
Other
Thank you.
questions? Okay.
Debt service quickly. On page 258 and 260, I just want to mention here, point out, the first box on the slide is the debt service for the fire millage, and that's an unlimited millage. We have, of this year, it'll be .2270. I just want to point out, after 2022 fiscal year, we will have no payments, so that millage will drop off. And then the court building debt, the very last year of the forecast, 2023-24, is the last year for that payment. And currently, the general fund pays that entire amount. Years ago, the DDA paid a significant amount of that, but currently, so that'll be relief to the general fund. Then the enterprise tab, which is about 303. The first fund is Arts, Beats, and Eats on page 304. Parking revenues expected to increase by approximately $40,000 relative to the current year, as the Civic Center project parking garage is due to open in June, which is going to expect to provide parking for the event. Parking revenue for fiscal year 18-19 festival came in under the original budget due to unexpected inclement weather during Labor Day last year. However, 19-20 revenue is budgeted at a level between the prior 2 years. The future year's estimated budget utilizes a small portion of fund balance. However, this projection is very uncertain due to the nature of the event, based on weather and turnout. Ultimately, near the end of the forecast, the fund would not go into a deficit position. So if the revenues are a little too conservative. So it's just a slight deficit there at the end.
Questions?
Oh, sorry. Page 308, Recreation Fund. Cultural events revenue is anticipated to increase $2,000 due to an increase in event marketing for public engagement. Then advertising revenue is increasing $1,300 due to an increase in field sponsorship. And then this is just the other side of that transfer that we talked about. Revenues received from the Senior Citizens Fund for office space rental is decreasing to $0 due to the methodology on the concept of the utilization of the Salter Center. And then 308 here has a fund summary and forecast. And basically what it shows, and I'll explain why, the revenues and expenditures pretty much matching up to $0. What I did is I pulled out depreciation so you could kind of see it more like on a cash basis, because that's what we kind of worry more about is cash flow. This is the enterprise fund, so it throws in a bunch of other things that, in my opinion, aren't important for our purposes. We care about cash here, I think more so. So just want to explain. So that depreciation is pulled out of there. So once you back in the appreciation, which is about $88,000, when you look at it on an accrual basis that we have, when you look at the financials, because we have to report it that way, you'll see more of a netting to $0. Okay. But truly, that depreciation money is not cash going out. So.
A question, real quick question.
Sure, Commissioner
It's
Mason.
for John, though. Hey, I was just wondering, are the leprechauns forecast into this or not?
The leprechauns are not forecast into this. but due to their improvements, I've gotten some input from Lawrence Tech that want to use our fields, maybe Oakland Community College if they put a program back together, in the Schoolcraft College. So,
So we should probably see even more field
yeah,
revenue.
there'll probably be some more future advertisers in there for field sponsors. We may end up getting a further increase in our cultural events revenue, because 4th of July is typically when our art fair is. So one of my marketing campaigns would be come to the art fair and then stick around and watch a college baseball game. So with the leprechauns coming into town, my mind's kind of exploding with marketing ideas and activities. So
Great, thank you. Leprechauns are coming to town, people.
Leprechauns.
Hey, we know where the pot of gold is.
That's all, thanks.
Not that I forgot, but when those words are first uttered out of your mouth, I'm like, am I in a completely different dimension? I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. The baseball team. It was about a quarter-second delay. I'm a little slow tonight. Okay, next one.
Auto parking fund, page 311. Total revenues are expected to increase slightly due to the 11-mile parking structure opening. However, the new garage will cause the decrease in the amount of revenue expected to receive from street meters, because we think that ticked up this year. Then the projection for attendant parking revenue at the Center Street Garage for fiscal year 1920 is decreasing by $200,000, that's anticipated. And then there's the transfer from the DDA TIF is budgeted at $583,000 to fund half of the debt service payment on Center Street.
SURG.
Then auto parking enforcement cost center is on page 313. Part-time wages are increasing, mostly due to the new part-time coordinator positions. And that position is split between this cost center and the parking operation cost center, which is on the next slide.
Ms. Rudd, do I see here correctly that since 2016, and comparing last year, we've actually written 25% less parking violations over that period? Almost 20,000 less?
The structures.
No, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with parking structures, and, you know, offering convenient parking and doing park mobile and things like that. But I think that's something worth noting, that, yes, revenues are down for, you know, this fund, but that's okay. That's a good thing. People aren't getting violations.
General fund.
The general fund, but attributed to violations. But, you know, as far as making our parking more convenient and accessible to people, this is an indicator to me that in just over 2 years, we're down 25%. You know, that's pretty good metric to have. Commissioner Dubak?
Yeah, I'm glad you caught that, because we've been having conversations about the fact that people want to be compliant. They don't want to get tickets, and we've been working to empower folks to do that, and that's evidence that it's working, so good note.
Page 315, this is the operations cost center. Just, I mentioned the first two items already in the last two evenings. So I'll jump down to the middle. Building repairs and maintenance includes $20,000 to repair the concrete at the Center Street parking garage, and then $5,000 for concrete joint repairs. And electrical and lighting supplies include $10,000 to change out broken light fixtures, and $20,000 has been budgeted in miscellaneous contracted services for the creation of a call center for automation charges, and $10,000 is due to increased costs of for the operation of the new garage, which is the 11-mile garage. And then I kind of mentioned this on the general fund side, but $275,000 is budgeted, again, for a second year for the in lieu of tax. And that would go to the general fund only.
Commissioner Macy.
Does this mean that we're gonna be able to pay tickets through an automatic system? Is that what 20,000 for the creation of a call center for automation charges, or does that mean something else? Don? Do you not know? Oh, Greg's got it.
The call center is an after-hours call, so when people have a problem getting out of the garage
Oh,
at
gotcha.
night. Prior to the creation of the call center, we had our parking supervisor handling all the calls and letting people out. And I told them, that's ridiculous.
That's crazy.
So they set up a call center that handles multiple garages throughout the Michigan, or Detroit area. And then it just goes to like a 1-800 number, and that person can release somebody or take care of their issue.
Perfect. Good idea.
Okay. Page 319 is the farmer's market. The Civic Center project continues to have an adverse impact on the market operations. Revenue from the facility rentals are projected to decline approximately $20,000. Annual rental revenues from producers are projected to decrease about $5,000. And special event revenue is projected to decrease $8,000. Contracted workers' services are increasing $35,000 due to an anticipated increase in the cost of the new market manager contract. Advertising and legal notices are increasing $5,000 for additional online advertising. And then there's 2 capital projects, the West Porch Enclosure, 11 Mile Road awning for $30,000, and outside heating elements for $18,000. On pages 319 and 320, you'll see what's on this slide here, the estimated future year's revenues and expenses projected in the budget summary box illustrates that revenues are not sufficient to sustain anticipated expenses, and use of retained earnings or fund balance. To balance the annual deficit may be necessary each year. However, should the facility rental revenue recover back to the levels in 17-18, which was a peak, which would need to be about $70,000, then the operating deficit will be pretty minor.
Commissioner Douglas.
So is it, I know, I asked I see her here, and she'd hate to, leave without having been able to speak to us. Do you think that, in terms of your special event or your facility rentals, are you seeing, are you seeing trends in moving away from our facility, or is it just a temporary aberration that you think is going to recover?
Absolutely. I think it's just a temporary thing. On 2 levels, we had one of our largest promoters that did several events a year, had an issue had nothing to do with us or the market. It was with getting the special one-day liquor licenses, so it was between them and the MLCC. And they had a significant amount from January of 2019 until the end of this fiscal year. So we lost about a minimum like $24,000 right there in revenue for rentals. So that had nothing to do with parking issues or construction or anything like that at all. We have some, when it comes to wedding receptions, it's not the most aesthetically pleasing situation going on over there currently. We are booking, but it is down by about 50% for weddings and private rentals. We have a lot of things in the works, sponsorships, we're working a lot now. We're trying to work with companies that are doing corporate events there and things. We're reaching out to a lot of other people. We're getting a good response from that. I absolutely think we're going to build it back. I actually think when this is all said and done, it's going to be bigger and better than ever. We're working on joining the market with the new structure. We're calling it Market Way. I've talked to Mr. Johnson about this on several occasions, and we're going to kind of join it between us, past the library, right to the structure. We walked it today, and actually from the new structure, with those new 581 spaces, when you stand almost at the structure and you walk to our south door, and there's a lovely path. Of course, if it's raining or snowing, that's not as much fun, but it's almost the same distance as what it was from the end of our east lot to the building.
I know.
So, you know what I mean? So it's just a perception. So we've got a big promotion for the grand opening, June 15th, of the structure. We're doing unique market tote bags. We're giving out gift certificates, a certain amount, working with Judy Davids. So we're really excited about that, to try to encourage people to get in to see that the structure is inviting. I think it'll help a lot when City Hall is opened. We just found out at the last meeting, we are regaining 120 spaces there beyond even where the employee area is or the city vehicle parking at City Hall. So we're kind of spreading that word. So that's another 120 spaces that we will get back. And then I think with that and the structure in our west lot and, just having, I think once that opens, that'll change a lot of the aesthetics issues and stuff. So I expect it to come back and then some.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Perush.
Is the West Porch enclosure, is that gonna be, a year-round winterized enclosure or just screening? What is it gonna be?
That, it was to have a year-round.
Okay.
A lot of our rentals will use that area, to put like high-top cocktail area, like before a wedding reception, it'll be the meeting area. Or they'll use it as the VIP when they have like Haven, the big, we just had that huge
Yep.
event. That's their largest fundraiser that we just did last Thursday. So they use it, so really nice of the fundraising events and things like that, the charitable fundraising things. They use that area a lot. So having that, available 365 is kind of nice. So that's something we've talked about for a few years.
So that'll-
And we could put vendors out there too, all year round.
And that'll really increase your square footage. I mean,
Exactly.
that's a huge
It
area.
is, it's a lot larger than they realize, yeah.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Commissioner Dubak.
I don't think this has been discussed yet, but I remember an email or something recently from the Historical Commission who's researching a historical designation for the farmers market, asking for the allocation of some funds to continue to pursue that designation, and that their work with the state required some investment, or doing background research required some investment. I just want to make sure that that's in this budget so we can continue to pursue that. And I'm curious if, from a marketing standpoint, having your wedding at the historic Royal Oak Farmers Market, is that something that would add value to bringing people in?
I absolutely believe so. Yeah, they've talked to us about, we'll have a plaque and, a nice, and I know that when people had to park over in our lot, we just had a little facelift too. So I should mention that. So that was a nice thing. There were areas, the ledges were crumbling. I know Mr. Johnson mentioned it several times because he was parking right there and walking right by it every day. And I don't know if you've seen it lately, but it looks really great.
I've been parking at Center Street lately,
so.
so.
And I think with the historical aspect, yeah, I think everything is contributing to a lot of success in the future. We just have some challenges to get through
Understood.
right now, and I think
We're all powering through. Yes.
they're loving the shopping carts we bought. We're creating a loading zone for the plants, and the farmers now are, they're getting on board and understanding. And we have actually been very busy the last couple Saturdays, and we're getting them to load. We've had the valet. They're starting to embrace that. So it's just, a little bit of change, and everybody's getting used to it and getting on board.
9 more days.
We're excited about the structure opening.
As I recall, it was just a few $1,000s. Is that something that's going to take direction from us to investors in this budget?
Well, first of all, you've got a request from somebody who's not the chair of the committee.
I
don't know whether the committee actually acted on it or not, but we do not give budgets to committees. What they would do is make a request, and it would go through staff.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we've got places to expend that.
Okay, so I'll make sure that conversation's happening. Thank you.
Commissioner Douglas.
So, Commissioner Dubak made me think. The his historic designation is either because of a history, some historical connection, or for appearances. If we're enclosing that west porch, at what point have we changed the appearance of the market to such an extent that it doesn't qualify for historic designation? Are we working at cross purposes here?
How old is that west porch? That west porch is not original to the building.
Correct. That's
And
the
it's newer, I think, than the east porch. Blah. East porch.
1996, I'm gonna say.
Yeah, it's more recent than you would think. I
yeah,
have
it's
no
right around
idea
Mr.
how
Halleck
that
might know
impacts
the
your
answer. Can you
question.
shout it out, Mr. Halleck?
That was done during my term, 2001 to 2005, somewhere around 2005.
Okay.
4 or 5.
For the west porch.
Yeah, the west porch and some other, the lighting and other issues.
Okay.
I have no idea what the impact is on your question, but to the extent that additions, fairly recent additions, have impacted the exterior appearance, that's a pretty big one right there.
Commissioner
And
Gibbs?
it's only 14 years old.
Because I've attended a fair number of the Historic District Study Committee meetings, my understanding, and nobody's here to confirm this, is that to have historic district designation, it's the original structure that they're concerned about. So if you're adding on to an add-on, it's not gonna break your neck, you know what I mean? It's not gonna.
Right, disqualify
It's
you.
not gonna disqualify you, correct.
Because you're not touching the original
You're
structure.
not touching the original structure, you're not touching the original, the foundation, you're not touching the original walls. It's,
So we can have confidence that if we move forward and, this is in the budget and we approve it, I mean, we'll still come before us again to approve the final thing. But I think the message to staff is, let's not cross our hairs, let's double check and make sure if there are any complications, we know about it, as opposed to approving this, and then the historical committee comes back to us and says, we got it, but you can't do anything to the west porch, and then we're, chasing our tail around. So I think we can, based on what Commissioner Gibbs says, there's a likelihood this shouldn't be an issue, but we should make sure before this is presented to us that we see what the issues may arise for that committee.
Absolutely.
and I would do this before it's submitted to the state. They're getting very close to submitting to the state.
Okay.
So they were in close to final preparations of the report that the state receives. Ruth Cleveland, we can always give her a call, or I can give her a call and report back if.
Maybe it's a simple answer. So, yeah, I mean.
Yes. Because we did that storeroom too on the outside, and they're aware of that, and I don't think that had any impact.
Right, okay.
That on that west, that northwest corner.
I'll check with Ruth tomorrow.
Perfect. Report back.
I will.
Thank you.
I want that designation.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Any other questions about the farmer's market? Are we gonna see the, what did you call it now? I thought it was a very clever term. The pathway between the park.
Market Way.
Market Way.
That's kind of how we're.
Sounded clever, but now that I think about it, it's pretty simple, but it's clever in its simpleness.
Yeah.
Is that something you plan on doing this summer?
We're actually trying to do kind of a mini version.
Okay.
On that opening, depending on the weather, of June 15th. We'll at least have a certain amount out there and kind of.
Kind of feel it out and see where you go
Yes,
next.
exactly.
Perfect. I think it's an excellent idea.
Great, thank you.
All right. That means more vendors to choose from. Eventually, they'll kind of tie into the park when the park's there, and it just creates this
Exactly what we're.
environment that's so inviting for exactly the type of experience people want to get, synonymous with the farmer's market, the park, the library. I mean, it's a heck of a day if you know.
It's a no-brainer, yeah.
It's a no-brainer. And actually, we see them. I mean, my wife and I go to them in Florida when we're down visiting her folks. They just do pop-up farmers markets, and they're kind of neat. They just kind of go around a city block, and you get to circulate, and it makes it kind of a different experience as well.
Cool atmosphere,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, good vibes. All right. Anything else? Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you.
Okay, page 326, Water and Sewer Fund. I'm not covering all the cost centers because there are not really a lot of significant items to discuss. The water purchases from SACWA are budgeted to remain relatively flat. They really didn't increase their costs. Flat rate billing charge is proposed to increase from $11.25 to $12 per quarter. This is the first flat rate fee increase that we've had in 3 years. The water rate is budgeted to increase about 3.1%, and the sewer approximately 3.3%. Most of the water is due to, and we'll get to that in a moment, increased capital construction costs. And then the sewer is mostly due to the increase from the drain commission. The drain millage is budgeted at 1.085, and that's a reduction from the current year of 1.1360. And page 327. There's a decent sized personnel cost decrease here in the water billing cost center, and that's due to a reallocation of the treasury staff. Page 331, meter services. Water meters and meter parts are increasing $60,000 due to a more aggressive meter changeout plan for next year. And the administration is currently reviewing a proposal to install the balance of the change out of the meters and new radio read units, which would provide all the water and sewer customers with radio read technology. However, the expenditure is not in the budget that you see here. Sewer maintenance cost center on page 333. Motor pool charges are increasing significantly, approximately $288,000 due to new equipment acquired in fiscal year 18-19, as well as the city's 2 combination waste vacuum disposal cleaner trucks replacement costs being allocated to this cost center as opposed to a different one in 18-19. Sewer disposal services are increasing 1.8%, and that is the cost from the Drain Commission, what they've determined to increase their cost to us for next year. $640,000 is budgeted for sewer televising and root control, and then $100,000 is budgeted for sewer fog treatment. And then on page 335 shows all of the construction projects, and as you can see, it's increasing up to almost $6 million next year.
Mayor?
Commissioner Lavasser.
Thank you. Julie, the $12 flat fee, that's the quarterly fee on the water bill. Does that correlate with the administrative costs of billing and taking care of this?
Yes, we directly try to link what we think are the costs attributed to the billing, to that fee.
Okay. All right. Now, are we being televised tonight? Right, you know, there may be some folks, I mean, you mentioned the drain millage, and there may be some folks watching who are anticipating that may fall off this year. They may not be privy to some of the discussions we had in other meetings that were not televised. So I just think it's appropriate if we could discuss what we're doing there and what we anticipate.
We haven't given up hope on being able to do that yet, but it's going to require a change in state law. A very simple change that changes the word shall to the word may. Because right now, the state law actually says that we shall bill the debt, the sewer debt, as a tax levy.
All right, and just
we really don't want to. We would rather do it as part of a stormwater ordinance and a stormwater fee.
All right, and just to provide a little background for folks that may not have this, you know, previously the drains were funded through a charge on the water bills, and as a result of litigation, we can't do that anymore.
That's correct. When you say the drains, we're talking about stormwater drains.
Stormwater drains, yeah. And so there was some discussion at a special meeting that was not televised where this issue about whether or not we can fund those drains through something other than a tax came up.
Right.
And so that's...
Originally, we thought we could, but we got an opinion, a legal opinion that said the state law says shall, and shall means you must. So, you know, in order to change that, we're going to have to change the state law.
Right. Thank you.
When you say we're going to have to change the state law,
Going to have to ask the state legislature to change the state law.
how many other cities are in the same boat?
At least 12.
There are others.
So might we, I mean, are you contemplating getting them to go to the Michigan Municipal League and enlist their support?
There is a stormwater bill that's being proposed that already has MML support. fact, I think it had been introduced once before in the previous section. And our own former state senator was one of the biggest champions of it, but he's no longer there.
So should we be talking to our new state senator?
We should.
And our,
And our state rep. And I have to our state rep.
you'll let us know what effort you want on, by us, at the appropriate time? Okay?
But it is still our goal that we think this should be funded through a fee based on how much you're contributing to the system, rather than a fee based on a tax based on the value of your property.
One might think that that would be appealing to members of the legislature, a fee versus a tax.
Well, they're always hesitant to change anything.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Just in time. We tap danced.
Thank you. The Ice Arena Fund, page 338, has the significant note box. Overall revenues are projected. I don't know what they're that's missing. Let's see. Decrease, thank you. Leagues and tournaments are decreasing $70,000. However, this will open up rink time, which will allow for the introduction of a senior league and other possible leagues with hopes of rebounding some of those lost revenues. Rink rentals are budgeted to see a decrease of $30,000 due to losing travel hockey teams. Revenues from ice lessons are increasing $10,000 with the anticipation that the new Learn to Skate program and Skate Jam will encourage and increase participation. Drop-in hockey and freestyle are projected to increase $15,000 and $10,000 respectively as more adults participate during the sessions. And then the ice show admissions are expected to increase $5,000. And then pages 338 and 339. The budget summary forecast shows the fund is projected to remain healthy. The estimated future budget, however, for 2021 includes a capital outlay of $1,025,000 is anticipated to replace one of the two ice arena roofs. So that's where you see the red there. No questions? Okay. Then the IT fund is on page 344. The vacant network engineer position is being eliminated. In lieu of hiring a full-time network engineer, which is out of our salary range, $50,000 has been added to miscellaneous contracted services budget to cover that function, hopefully. In the computer supply account, $75,000 is budgeted for replacement computer program, $7,500 for replacement laptops, and $10,000 for replacement uninterruptible power supply, $20,000 for replacement switches, $5,000 carried over from this fiscal year for the court e-filing, which at this time will only be to scan documents for civil cases, but they're hoping that'll grow into the other divisions. Windows 7 operating system is scheduled for the to end support in early 2020, therefore $30,000 has been added to the budget for upgrading PCs to Windows 10. And then just a reminder, at this time, none of the technology budget for the Civic Center project is in this cost center or this fund. It's all over in the WROK Capital Project Fund. And then there's about $260,000 in capital projects, disaster recovery, office software and training, GIS integration, server network cabling infrastructure, and mobile workforce.
Any questions on the IT fund? Commissioner Prush.
This isn't so much necessarily about the fund, it's about the IT function in the city. You hear on the news every now and then that a municipality or a county has been hacked, and all of a sudden they can't deliver water, or, you know, a certain component of their service that is tied into the computer system it goes down, and then it takes them a while to recover. A municipality, I can't remember where it was hacked, and then there was a ransom demand. You want your water turned back on, pay us $100,000. Excuse me?
Baltimore, just a couple weeks ago.
Baltimore, it was Baltimore. So are we, how confident are we that we've got enough, Julie's shaking her head, that's
I
depressing.
think the Pentagon gets hacked 8 times a day. I think I've heard that statistic. I mean, it's just, our IT manager currently, he'll do little exercises, and he'll put little threats out there to see maybe who isn't being careful. So, I mean, we're doing what we can, but is it preventable?
The results of those tests are often very discouraging.
Well, and with a lot of this too,
Number of people that click on things they shouldn't click on, and
That's the challenge. I mean, you look at this stuff and you look at the ransomware and you look at all these other things that get downloaded on people's PCs and laptops. You can have every firewall, every bit of security, but generally the crooks figure out, how to get around it and send you a legitimate email. And a lot of this, I would say 90%, and I'm probably being too high here, but is coming down to making sure people are trained and they're aware, and that we have data security practices where we're talking to our people once every other month. We do it at our corporation, where we just had a meeting for an hour and we went through all the latest phishing scams and everything like that, and we have individuals that walk around and see if your laptop's open, and there's things you can do to log in and protect, but I mean, I don't want to give our company's numbers, but every company, every government, I mean, everybody's getting targeted. And it usually, when something happens, oh, I have a package waiting for me? Somebody sent me a package? And then you click on it and it's like, oh, next thing you know, you get a skeleton on your screen and says, pay me $1 million or your whole company's going down. So a lot of it's training too. And I think if you notice even on our emails, it says external warning. I mean, it's a little bit, kind of off-putting. It's like, wow, I really want to address this email. It scares me, but it's good to make you aware, hey, double check, before you respond or download something. Yes, Ms.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot more of that training. I get emails that are allegedly from the city manager, and also employees that say, and they know who to send them to. It's from the city manager, hey, transfer this money, I need this money transferred. Because based on the content, I know it's not correct.
Julie knows better than to transfer money based on
But-
anything I send.
But they have his signature on it, and they send it to me, so it's not real random. It's very specific.
Are you this email's too friendly, it can't be from Don?
That's exactly how I do it. It said, hi, how are you? So I'm like, this is I've had people asking to change their direct deposit, sent it to me, and it looks very, very real. And that's when the IT manager added that to the top of the screens that it's from an external source. It was because I think we had two.
Oh, we had
and
me.
2 directors. You as well, I didn't
We
hear
had,
that one.
I had 4 people email me, and I look at my email why do you want me to buy gift cards for people? I'm like, what? And somebody spoofed my city email, and we're going to I won't say who they are, but different department heads saying, yeah, I need you to do me a favor. Can you pick up 4 $100 gift cards or something? I need them ASAP. And it's this seems weird. Or another one was about scheduling a meeting, or click on this link for a meeting. I got one, and I got a call from the individual hey, sorry, I missed our meeting. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? So they even spoofed me.
Poor Howard Schiffman has been mugged twice in Nigeria and had to send an email looking for money.
Seriously? You're on your own, Howard.
Oh, my.
So I guess the bottom line is you don't feel the need for any significant expenditure this year in order to keep us safer than what we're already doing?
Not this year. A lot of the IT's focus is on the new buildings. So it's something they could not focus on.
Okay.
But I'm sure they will continue to, focus diligently after they get the, new buildings up. It's quite a project for them. It's taken up a lot of their time.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay. Motor pool, page 349. Tools and hardware line item include $15,000 for the purchase of specialty tools, which is actually a decrease of $8,500 relative to the original budget for 18-19. Vehicle repair and maintenance decreasing $30,000 and $10,000 respectively due to the city's vehicle replacement plan purchases that have reduced the average age of the fleet and thus the maintenance costs. Heating and cooling is increasing $10,000 due to needed repair to a conduit tunnel. And then equipment repair and maintenance costs are increasing $8,000 for a contingency. And then the capital that you see here on page 349, all of this is being paid with cash. There is no need to finance any of that. The total vehicles amount to nearly $2.3 million. Also, the budget includes $45,000 for HVAC air handling unit and $22,000 for baseball field sand groomer. And then I just want to mention, I do not have the fund summary. I usually don't do that on the funds that are internal service and enterprise funds because they're very difficult to really understand, but, so I did not put that up for the motor pool fund. But I want to point out in the 2021 column, you see, you should, let me get to that, page 349, whoops. 350, right? Oh, sorry, not 349, it's, thank you, 350. That 5.2 million almost includes $750,000 for the roof replacement at the DPS building.
You bumped the roof a year?
It's in 2021 right now. So not next year, but the year after.
You bumped it a year, because originally we were talking about doing it this year.
Are you leaking terribly?
I guess he needs it now.
Which roof is this? I think we're talking about the return of the ice
DPS.
arena roof.
DPS.
Oh, the DPS roof. Yeah, that was in.
DPS roof, we originally were doing it in 3 phases, and then we decided to do the 2 phases together. And I thought we were gonna do it this year, because I've already worked with US Communities on working out a plan to do it this year, but I mean, they've been asking me when can we start, and I said, after I get my budget approved.
But you didn't tell him what year budget, right? No.
I didn't tell them.
No, that's fine. There's cash in the fund.
Okay.
But the information we had still was
Okay, I
2021.
would like to do it this coming budget year, yeah.
What's the cost, Greg?
Okay.
About 750,000. So, and it's, once again, it's just one of those things, the roof hasn't been done, predates me, so it's probably
That's for the
close
2
to
phases
30.
at once, 750?
2 phases at once, it should be 750.
There's still a third phase to come.
No, the 3rd phase is already done, we did the front.
Oh, okay.
The 1st phase is already done.
Does everybody understand how motor pool works and how we use that here?
Yep.
Motor pool, I'm seeing some notes.
Oh, I totally
So,
understand.
Yes.
Motor pool owns all the vehicles and rents them to the departments. So in department budgets, you'll see rental fees going to motor pool. That's basically our internal rent-a-car system. A major reason for that is when we get over to the general fund and the other governmental funds, under the crazy type of accounting we use, we're not allowed to depreciate.
Oh, right.
So this is a means where we level out the costs so we don't get big jumps in the years that we have to buy vehicles. And motor pool does depreciate them, and motor pool ends up absorbing all the variability.
Kind of getting a little bit closer to proper financial accounting.
Yeah.
So the rental cost includes depreciation?
Yeah.
Commissioner Lavasser.
Okay, so just looking at the budget summary, and we see that there are, looks like we have ending unrestricted net assets that are growing from year to year. So essentially what the motor pool charges for the lease outs is more than what the actual expense is to acquire the asset. Am I getting that right?
There is some inflationary costs
Yes, there is.
on the replacement costs. We estimate some inflationary costs, but yeah, the reason why there's a growing fund balance there is that we matched up the timing of when we needed to replace vehicles, including fire equipment, which are very big, one-time items. And if you remember last year, we had determined that based on that timing and our cash that we would have, we would be short. So that's why we're about $4 million, so that's why we're doing the catch-up. So we started adding that last year. So this would be the second year for the catch-up, so I just wanted to let you know that's why you're seeing a significant increase in fund balance, because technically, when we did the analysis last year, the cash we had on hand was sufficient, or what we should have in that point in time to be able to replace all those vehicles.
And that's because we did a cut way back
A vacation.
pre-vacation. That's a good term. Prior to Don becoming finance director, I believe we did, that vacation occurred.
So I have a different question. I look at most of these, and these are really specific use type vehicles, like the pumper. We got the 2 SUVs for fire, maybe. But I see the 1 inspection for SUV, and I know we've talked about, SUVs, and we've talked about hybrids and all of that. And I know we were pushing to get at least some fully electric vehicles in our fleet. Is this an opportunity right here to move forward with a fully electric vehicle?
If we can find something that actually meets the needs of the department, most of these type of vehicles are being used by building inspectors and engineering inspectors. And one of the primary requirements is they need a vehicle that they're comfortable with to be able to climb a curb and get actually off the street. I'm not gonna call it off-road driving, but at least be able to climb a curb and get onto a construction site.
Could I ask you a dumb question? How often does that happen? Because
every day.
I feel like, I don't know, our construction sites are fenced in, at least the residential ones.
The commercial ones aren't. The commercial ones are the bigger jobs. What's out there right now in an electric SUV?
There isn't anything. I believe, I take that back. There's a Honda vehicle or a Nissan vehicle, Rogue, I believe. There's a Nissan Rogue out there.
There's a Tesla, but it's extremely expensive.
And the other
probably not on the market for a Tesla.
We're not going to get Tesla.
The police chief was talking about needing a vehicle for larger officers, why they're experimenting with the pickup truck. You don't think, we have the same issue with building inspectors and general employees getting in and out. Because a lot of the SUVs are smaller sedans, and being a larger individual, even someone my size, if you have to get in and out of a small sedan every day, it's not comfortable if you're hopping in and out of your car every 20 minutes or something like that.
I just know that I've seen other sedans and stuff like that in other communities that they use them for inspections, and I'm just...
Well, the SUVs that we use for inspections are not Explorers. I believe
They're Escapes.
They're Escapes. The engineering department has a couple of the large Explorers, but that's because they're carrying in some places engineering equipment that needs space long.
We
for
were,
devices and the like.
though we had to do some real finagling to get it, we were one of the first purchasers of hybrids, but, because we bought, how many
4.
hybrid Escapes did we buy?
We bought 4.
but Ford quit making them.
That was before they made the Escape smaller and sexier.
Yeah, a little more boxy.
And polite.
And we still have all those, don't we?
Still have all those, but
They're all over
those
10
are-
years old.
They're all over 10 years old.
Well, when I think when this comes back to us, I'd like to see at least a comparison, of a fully electric vehicle versus, what our standard is and just, get a little bit better idea. I hear, that, yeah, probably from time to time, we have to get out and drive up on a curb, but if 97% of the time we don't have to, I'd like to take a look at that. Not a big exercise, but, I think we gotta start, thinking differently. The comfort issue that Mr. Rassel brings up is interesting. I'll research that a little bit myself about ergonomics of getting in and out of vehicles, because I do know our inspectors, go from site to site to site versus just driving to work and coming home. But we also have police officers and sedan cruisers too, that are getting out and driving around, with heavy equipment on.
But taking the police comparison closer, we've made a decision to get out of sedan vehicles for police cruisers.
Sure.
Yeah, we're not buying any sedans anymore, not even the Tauruses.
Commissioner Perush?
Do we have electric charging stations already, or no?
We do not have we have electric charging stations in in both portions of the Center Street garage. There's a charging station in South Lafayette.
Right.
I don't know if there are any charging stations planned for the new Civic Center project. I don't think there are.
But I mean in your yard, in your DPW yard, do you have a charging station?
Oh, no, we do not.
Okay.
Commissioner Macy?
Somewhat off topic. Do we need to do anything about adding the roof to this budget?
Just consensus.
Well, this
At
fund
this point?
technically isn't even in the budget resolution, so. No, you don't need to.
We don't need to do anything.
No, it's really a matter of just providing you with some information. We'll update it, but when we actually ask you to adopt the budget, this fund does not get adopted.
Oh, there you have it.
Okay.
Mark. I hear it, chief.
Yeah, where's the chief?
He's out there.
Okay. Page 355 is healthcare fund. Blue Cross illustrative rates are increasing approximately 8% for the actives and essentially no change for the retiree rates. In addition, the HAP fully insured rate, which is for retirees only, increased about 3%. Approximately 60% of the medical budget in this fund is for retiree coverage. $10,000 is budgeted for the Health and Wellness Committee's future initiatives, and then $226,000 is budgeted for the healthcare center that we have a location over in Madison Heights and Ferndale. And page 357, the general liability and property self-insurance fund. The budget assumed a $240,000 net asset distribution, although this year we recently got a $420,000 one, so that is, that budget's relatively light. I thought it was gonna come in this year a little lower, and it didn't. And then the budget has decreased relative to the current year because we had a significant amount of replenishment of the self-insurance fund over at the MMRMA that I had to send over because of reserves were low. We had a lot of incidents and cases came in, and they set some reserves, and I had to send money over there. So this year's the budget's pretty high, meaning 18-19, when it's the current year we're in. So I anticipate next year it's not going to be so bad. And then page 362, we're getting close to the end. Really? No, look it down. 94, 96. The pension fund, as of the last actuarial report, June 30th, 2018, the required employer contribution was approximately $7.7 million. This is a $2.1 million increase relative to the prior year, mostly due to the assumption changes, which the significant change there was the investment return, as we've talked about before. If you look at the report, actually, I have a link to it if you're on the electronic version, though. The assumption changes that were implemented increased the liability by $21.2 million. That's what caused, and then what they do is they, amortize that over, relative to the funding level, amortize the unfunded, over, for general employees, it's about 20 years, for police and fire, it's about 25, and that's where you see that ARC increase. And of course, the full ARC is being budgeted because that's required by law for pensions, not for the OPEB. And then, again, there's a link, and I actually have page 85, I believe. Here. I thought I did. To pass out, and I just want to point this out because this is stemming from the conversation we had the first evening. Okay, so this is 2 pages out of the pension actuarial report that was last done. So on page A4, I have highlighted there that the present value of assets, $157 million.
This is in the document that's the link. Thank you.
And then if you look at A5, that other highlighted area, again, $157 million. I just want to talk about how that's developed. Just real quickly, this will not take long. You see the smoothing right above the highlight. What you see is the gain or loss for that year is put here in this little table where you see this. So we have a smoothing of 4 years of either the gain or loss that occurred that prior year as of June 30th of 4 years earlier, and then 3 years earlier, 1 year earlier in that current year. So what that gives you is line 5, the total recognized investment or gain or loss. So they smooth it, so there's not these radical fluctuations, that affect your ARC contributions, okay? So when I'm talking about, the system hasn't seen a correction lately. We have, between the two funds, about $285 million. About 65% of that is in the stock market. And then if we have a 20%, they consider a correction at 10%. So if we have something a little heavier than a correction, which we are overdue for by about 3 years now. So let's say 20%. That's a $37 million impact or loss between the two funds. So if you take about half of that and put that here, okay. So you're talking, $17 million loss that you have to smooth in over 4 years. So then what happens is that converts to line G, so that affects your funding value for the year. Okay, so you flip that number over, and then what they do is then they show that against what your liability is. So if you look right above the 157, you see your liability is about $242 million. And that difference is your new unfunded amount. So that's what my caution is if there's a market correction, we're gonna see, or even worse, we're gonna see a big impact on our smoothing formulation. That then results in an increased ARC contribution. So not only did our assumptions increase our ARC, now our reality could increase our ARC. Super helpful.
Commissioner Dubak.
So is the 4-year smoothing, is that by statute, is that inflicted on municipalities? I remember when I worked in the state legislature, my boss, who was in finance, was always advocating that municipalities be allowed to go to like a 7-year smoothing, because in finance, 4 is, no one does 4.
Yeah, it, actually, that 7-year may not be allowed any longer.
Okay.
I never really paid attention to it because we weren't, but I thought I heard, beyond 5 or something like that, you cannot do any longer. I'm not 100% on that, but I thought I
Yeah,
heard
she was
that.
advocating to change the law back, so I don't think it's allowed now. But she
yeah.
was saying from an accounting perspective, a 4-year smoothing is like too short a look back.
Didn't MERS used to use 10?
I'm not familiar with MERS smoothing.
I think that's the case.
Okay, and then, I don't have a page number on this one. It's close. The very next, 364. This is the Retiree Healthcare Trust. And just want to mention real quickly that their ARC is annual recommended contribution. And that is just over $1 million for next year, which is about $650,000 more than the prior year. Because we bonded and we were fully funded, so there wasn't much contribution there. Now that the assumptions changed, we're a little underfunded, so that's why that increased. And then, again, it's a not required contribution, it's recommended. However, the budget calls for the entire ARC to be budgeted. And then there's a link to that report as well on the website.
Just to be clear, state law requires us to fund the ARC for pensions, but not health care?
Correct.
And those are all my slides. And if there's something I did not cover.
Do you have any questions for Ms. Rudd? There is one topic I'd like to talk about once we get through the budget discussion. So before we make a motion to adjourn, something did come in kind of late. Commissioner Prush?
I just want to point out, especially for those who are actually going through this budget by themselves and are not necessarily going to be doing this all tonight and they want more information, there's a lot of supplemental information, which I didn't realize the full extent of until I looked at last year's budget for a couple of data points. A lot of demographic information about the community, population by age and by gender, population trends, travel time to work, for a whole lot of demographic information, about 40 pages of it, that is extraordinarily helpful and useful information, interesting information about our community. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, or you're, a statistic geek, this is where you need to go, to the back of the budget for the supplemental information. It's really, really interesting.
Mr. Johnson, I'll let you interject before Commissioner Dubak.
I want to get ahead of Commissioner DeBuck. I was just going to summarize what I've got for the changes. And I just want to get a confirmation from the commission. We've got an addition of $65,573 to Parks and Forestry for Normandy. This is the, this is the.
600, did you say 600?
No, 65,573. We've got the
That's his
600.
estimate of the Robertson Brothers
That's a couple
development.
lines here now. I'm
sorry.
talking about the Robertson money right now. We also got $50,000 that we're going to put in Parks and Forestry, although it might end up getting used in recreation or senior or something like that in the end. But we're going to put it in Parks and Forestry. I've got $600,000 that's going to the Park Improvement Fund for Normandy, with the intention of completing the trails, nature area, and bridge up front instead of waiting the 3 years. These are the things that the county's ultimately paying for. And then I've also got I don't have a number for it yet. We have to calculate it. In addition, for repaving and green infrastructure for the senior parking lot. That's all I'm showing right now for changes. Is that correct?
Yeah. Is there anything else anyone would like to see or discuss? We're at the other topic right now. Commissioner Dubak.
Yeah, just piggybacking on what Commissioner Prush said, as far as there being great information in this budget, can we get a link on the homepage so any residents wanting to check out the budget don't have to go looking for it?
Yeah, we can take care of that.
Cool.
I think in your introductory letter too, I think was also very informative. For those
Absolutely.
who don't want to read the 500 pages, they can read the 4 pages.
Yeah, we'll get that up there too. I meant to do that today and forgot all about it.
Don, the proper answer is I was doing so many great things
Yeah,
for the
I
city
know.
that the day hasn't ended, but
But the truth is, I'm so old and senile that I can't remember anything anymore.
Oh, man. I did want to bring up something that kind of came in last minute. It has nothing to do with the budget, but it's a resolution that we were asked to do. I don't know if you guys received it from Oakland County. It's a resolution in support of the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which is women's suffrage right to vote. So I can read the letter. I can read the resolution, and I know it's sort of out of place, but we could wait. There's something that here that we can do, like on the 10th of June, which would be, but I think by the next time we meet, it wouldn't give us enough time to plan or do it. So I'm going to read it, see what you think, and if you give me that privilege, and then if someone wants to make a motion, I'd love to entertain it. So this says, "To whom it may concern." So this was to us. On behalf of the Oakland County Board of Commissioners, we are requesting your assistance as we honor and celebrate the important milestone in our nation's history, the passage of the 19th Amendment, guaranteeing and protecting women's constitutional right to vote. Women's right to vote was not easily won. Ratification was the result of decades of organized grassroots movements, communities throughout the country. It is in this spirit that we have determined that the participation and support of local communities is key component in this celebration. We hope that you'll join us in this campaign to raise awareness and celebrate this historic milestone. You can do so by passing this resolution and recognizing the historic centennial through your governing board. A sample resolution is enclosed. The Board of Commissioners will be kicking off the centennial commemoration in honor of Michigan's ratification of the 19th Amendment this June. All communities that have returned resolutions to the Board of Commissioners by June 3rd, 2019 will receive a 19th Amendment suffrage victory flag. We ask that you fly this flag from June 10th to 14th in honor of the 100th anniversary of Michigan's ratification of the 19th Amendment. We'll fly the flags again countywide from August 24th, 28th, 2020 in honor of the 100th anniversary of the federal ratification. So, and then there's some, administrative information here about how to get our resolution to the county, which I think is pretty cool. I'd love to, one, commemorate this milestone. I think in this point of our history, it's important to, take a look back that even though 100 years seems like a long time ago, it really isn't. It's we have a lot more progress to make, but I think, reminding ourselves of some of the progress, the hard-fought battles to give, people the right to vote and to, make our country, our state, our county, and our cities more equal and accessible to everybody is important. And I think that I'd be very proud to have Royal Oak have this resolution, and I hope you feel the same way. I'll read the resolution if there's no objection. The sample resolution is pretty good, actually. Celebrating the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, giving women the right to vote. Whereas women of every race, class, and ethnic background across America have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of the United States in countless recorded and unrecorded ways. And whereas the women of this nation initiated the most significant women's movement in history, the need for women's suffrage. And whereas despite the strong opposition, the inspiration and determination of women nationwide brought about an extraordinary accomplishment, the right for women to vote. And whereas on June 10th, 1919, Michigan women cast their vote when Michigan voters ratified the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. And whereas the state of Michigan was the second state to ratify the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote. And whereas on August 26, 1920, voters across the nation secured the right for women to vote when the 19th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States was ratified, empowering American women and declaring for the first time that they, like men, deserve the rights and responsibilities of citizenship, stating, "The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex." And whereas August 26, 2020 will mark the 100th anniversary of the passage of the National Suffrage Amendment, the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution, guaranteeing women the right to vote. And now, therefore, it be resolved that I, Mayor Mike Fournier, and the members of the Royal Oak City Commission remembers and celebrates the historic women who fought for their right to vote and recognize the courage and inspiration of these bold women to change the course of history. Be it further resolved that I, Mayor Fournier, and the Royal Oak City Commission will fly the 19th Amendment victory flag June 10th, 2019 through June 14th, 2019 to commemorate the state of Michigan ratifying the 19th Amendment, and August 24th, 2020 through 2020 to commemorate the ratification of the 19th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States.
Move approval of the resolution.
We have a motion by Commissioner Douglas. We have a second by Commissioner Macy. Discussion. Commissioner Perush.
So I think you said originally that if we do this by June 3rd, we get,
Get a flag.
you get a flag.
They're gonna give us the flag.
They're going to give us the
They're
flag.
gonna give us a flag.
Yep, and then the 10th and the 14th, I'd like to do a little ceremony. Maybe we can get Ms. Davids or Ms. Schwanger to see if Rosie the Riveters or somebody, try to do something, a little bit more than just raise it unsymbolically. I think this is an important enough anniversary that it would be great to try to do something, special with it. Commissioner Macy?
Do we do this at the same time we have the pride flag? Do we have?
Well, we will have 3 flags up there then.
Okay, so it's okay.
I don't know what the
about
formal,
flag.
I don't know if there's any laws prohibiting us from flying more than 2 flags on the flagpole. I mean, certainly the American flag has to come first.
Well, there's more than one flagpole.
Yeah, there is, isn't there?
And isn't our Tree City USA flag up there?
Yep.
Okay, so there's plenty of flag space. Yeah.
Logistically, we'll figure it out.
Okay, I'm just,
We have to put a flagpole in. We'll figure it out. Oh, wait, we haven't passed the budget yet. Yeah, I think this would be something really important. I think it would be great to, get the word out as soon as possible. And, I'm grateful that at least we have a motion on the table to get this resolution through and commemorate it. Any other discussion on it? Commissioner Macy?
want my daughters to be able to pull the flag up.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know what? I think we should have a quick brainstorming on how we should do the ceremony, but I think that would be remarkable. I mean, as a father of 2, soon-to-be brilliant young citizens of this world that are going to be fine women when they grow up, I'd love to see, the future raise the past. I mean, that would be, I think, very symbolic.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. Okay, sorry to throw this on you last minute. I couldn't print any copies because I'm not even sure if I even have appropriate printer ink or anything like that, and the timing of it was kind of interesting as well, so. Any other discussion? With none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. All right. Wonderful. Ms. Hallis, I imagine you can get that to the county before June 3rd? Overnight our flag. Perfect. All right. Well,
Mr. Johnson has his hand.
Mr. Johnson.
Before you forget, we do have one more of these meetings scheduled. If we do not need it, a resolution to cancel that one would be appropriate.
I have more to say. I want to meet again.
Fortunately, we have we can can outvote you.
So we should move quickly before,
Yes, somebody move briskly if there's nothing important to discuss. Commissioner
it
Lavasser.
was June 3rd, if I recall?
Monday, June 3rd,
Right,
yes.
so you're looking for a motion to essentially cancel that meeting, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to so move.
Motion by Commissioner
I'll
Lavasser.
second that.
Second by Commissioner Gibbs. Discussion? All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Okay, so we'll have the hearing at a city commission meeting. Forget what date it's gonna be. June 10th? Okay. And then from there, we will,
We should do the ceremony right before the meeting.
that is a most excellent idea. That worked out pretty good, didn't
It
it?
worked out
We
nicely.
should have the Girl Scouts do it.
Nope, 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 nope. Already called dibs.
Commissioner Macy, can we informally ask for your support to come brainstorm some ideas of how to make a nice ceremony?
Yes.
Okay.
Just like, yeah, let my daughters do it.
I just told you how.
Who cares? Bring snacks and have my daughters do it.
That is essentially what I'm going to plan.
All right. Well, I think we're at a point where we can entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Commissioner Dubak, second by Commissioner Gibbs. Discussion? With none, I'll call, Commissioner Gibbs?
No,
Oh.
let's go.
With none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Adjourned.